S- Sarah, Corey he's here and he's just having some login problems. So I guess I'll read the first one until he gets here.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, so we're live on YouTube, and then I think it just depends on whether the attendees are ready. For the applicants, I mean.
Okay.
So the applicants have joined. We're just waiting on staff. Here we go.
All right.
Okay, we can start.
Great. Okay. Welcome back to the afternoon session of the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing of December 8th, 2020. We are beginning the afternoon session with item number 6, Trinity Church and Graveyard. And I will turn it over to Caroline Kane-Levy, our Deputy Director on Preservation, to read the item into the agenda, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Item number 6 is docket number 21-02452, 75 Broadway, Trinity Church and Graveyard Individual Landmark in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 49, Lot 1. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness, a Gothic revival style church designed by Richard Upjohn and built in 1846. And the application is to install signage.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the screen. Please state your name for the record and remember to unmute yourself, and you may begin the presentation.
And before we begin, I want to note for the record that Commissioner Bland is recused on this item, is not present. Okay, please go ahead.
This is Jeff Murphy. I'm a partner at Murphy, Burnham and Buttrick Architects. And I'm with my colleague, Catherine Melishewski, who's our preservationist and is manning the presentation. And I'm also here with Patty Walsh, who is the Chief Communications Officer at Trinity Church, in the event that you'd like to direct questions to the owner. So this is the last of several hearings that we've had for Trinity Church, and multiple engagements on staff level items, and so we're really at the end of the project. And I wanted to thank James and Amanda and Caroline for their constructive engagement throughout our project, and we're very pleased to sort of be at this point in the project. This is about legalizing signage that's along Trinity Place, and it's also about getting approval for new signs, which are designed to limit the number of signs that have been hung in the past on the Broadway fence in front of the church. Next, please. Upper left is the site plan, and it shows the area in front of the church along Broadway, where we're proposing signage, and then B, along Trinity Place, where we're asking for a legalization of signs that were already, signs or banners that were already installed. Next, please. This shows sort of the amalgam of signage that has been put on the Broadway fence by Trinity Church. And, you know, the real issue here is that they have an incredibly robust mission programming and presentation and everything from social service events to concerts and just an amazing array of programs. So this is designed, the signage we're proposing along Broadway is designed to really limit the number of signs, but to really be able to convey clearly what's going on in terms of the mission inside of the church. Next, please. This is a plan that shows all of the signs that we've been talking to the staff at the staff level. And the red signs are actually signs that we're eliminating. If you go to the next plan, you can see along Trinity Place, there are four red dots. Those are the two banners, or the four banners that we are seeking to legalize. And then on the Broadway side, the four signs that are attached to the fence, two of which are digital signs. Next, please. So on Trinity Place, those of you who are familiar with the condition there, you'll see quite a high wall. It's a sort of from a urban standpoint, you're sort of walking along this high wall, and actually the banners help to humanize the pedestrian experience here. You're looking at four signs that don't have red squares around them that were legalized that were approved by LPC in 2009, and for some reason we're not sure why there were four additional banners placed along that road there too. So we're seeking to legalize those. And then on the Broadway side, there's two types of signs. One is the C1 signs announce worship services, and they flank the entry gates to the church, and then spread further out, sort of in front of where the vestibules, the north and south vestibules are these digital signs that are mounted to the fence. Next, please. And this is a rendering of what, or a drop-in montage of what those look like. On the left, the C1 side and the standard frame mounted to the fence for the services, and the digital sign to the right. We just wanted to include a series of images that show precedents for digital signs. These are previously LPC approved signs. Lower right is the Middle Collegiate, which sadly had a fire in it this past weekend, but they also have a sign that was approved by LPC. Next, please. And this is sort of the type of signage that we're thinking of for the monitors. They include, information about worship, information about concerts, and they're all in a very, in a standardized graphic presentation that's been developed by Trinity Church and very consistent throughout. And on the right are just, if you go back, Catherine, on the right are just the specifications for what that digital sign will be doing, the amount of time for each image, so forth. And then this is a front an elevation standing in front on Broadway, partial elevation showing the two digital signs on either side, with the static displays showing the schedule for the services flanking the entry gate. This shows a mounting detail where we're trying to stand off from the gate itself using these little sort of spacers, and it's basically 4 bolts that hold this in place. It's the same thing for the standard sign. This is just an added detail shot that shows that most of the wiring for these signs is underneath the paving, and we're doing our best to minimize the impact of that as it climbs up the balustrade to get to the monitor. This is the standard sign. Both of these signs have sort of a back to them, so that when you look at them as you're leaving the church, you basically just see, we're trying to minimize the visual clutter by just showing just a flat black panel. Next, Catherine. And this is the actual digital sign product. And that's it. We have an appendix of some of the staff level approved signs if you would like to look at those as well.
Right, thank you very much. Let's see if we have any questions or anyone needs to turn to the appendix. Okay, questions, commissioners? All right, Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead.
On the question of detail, how the power is delivered to the sign, is there a better way than just wrapping it around the fence rather than putting in a separate pole that comes across and connects, so you don't have this kind of wiring crawling up the fence? Have you thought of that, or is that something that's difficult to do?
So you're suggesting just a piece of conduit that just sort of comes up and taps into the.
Well, not necessarily a conduit, a pipe with a conduit in it that comes up and connects to the sign, kind of an L-shaped thing, that a separate element that connects to the sign rather than having all this wiring going up to the sign that you see. Just an idea, just a thought.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, first of all, I think that this this actual cable is we're able to make that not like a big, it's not a typical conduit cable with a metal casing. I believe it's a black cable that just sort of comes up and across, and we're trying to keep it flat so that somebody doesn't sort of hook their foot into it and create a tripping hazard. But I think our attempt here is just try to minimize what you see and minimize the impact on the existing fabric. And this is sadly shown as kind of looped up, and I think the reality is it's going to be tightly clipped to that curb and tightly clipped to that stretch of balustrade, that stretch of picket, which is it looks to be about 15 inches, something like that. But we can definitely take a look at how we can minimize that. I think you're correct in pointing it out, that it's it has an impact on the fabric.
Thank you. Commissioner Devonshire?
Yeah. Why do you need two digital displays on the same side fence?
I think the feeling is so we really got to the digital sign because we really were trying to instead of having 6 or 8 signs along that fence showing the different events that are happening at the church, we really tried to use the digital signs to minimize that number of signs. And the feeling is that there's so many people that congregate in front of this church. I mean, we're showing pictures that have no people in them, but typically there's, now with the security in the front vestibule, there are lines out the door. And the feeling was that you just wouldn't cover enough. You wouldn't cover enough people to see the signs without 2 of them.
Do any of the other churches that you mentioned have more than one digital sign?
Catherine, can you answer that question?
I don't believe so, But also at Trinity, we have two major entrance points. On the south is the subway entrances, and then to the north, you have the Fulton Street and the Oculus. So you are getting two really big transportation hubs to the north and the south. So being able to have a sign at each end addresses both of those.
Right. So Commissioner Catherine brings up a good point that those other gates are actually other main entrances to the church. So that's primarily why we have two, because each of those gates can handle an equal number of people coming in and out of the church.
But the signs are advertising essentially though, right? So anyone using that gate is already aware of whatever the event is.
Well, conceivably you could go in the north gate. If there was not a digital sign there, you could go in that north gate and never see a sign if there wasn't one there. Or you could go in the south gate and never see a sign if the sign wasn't there.
Also, there is such a wide variety of programming that I don't actually think everybody who goes to Trinity knows of the programming, especially tourists. Like, they wouldn't know that there are prayer readings or lunches in the afternoon. So it's to also let the community know what's available.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I have two additional questions. On the right-hand side, how wide is that panel? Is it 8 inches, 9 inches wide from what I see in section 02?
Yeah.
It's a, what is it?
Go to that detail. Can you read that, Catherine?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to zoom.
It looks like 6.5 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
6 inches, almost 6 inches.
Without the face, so it's just over 7 inches with the face of the panel.
And the other question, does it have to be on the fence or could it be freestanding, separate from the fence?
We looked at that, Commissioner, and we at one point we looked at putting these on posts inside the fence, and when we took a closer look at that, we just felt like they would get lost among the architecture, and that having these on the fence is where people would see them, and it would have, you know, the least impact on the architecture. You know, putting it, you know, one of the places we looked to put this was inboard of that gate, 5 or 6 feet. But then it stands out against, you know, some of the beautiful monuments in the graveyard and the actual architecture of the building.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Sarah, just to add a little bit of background information, I did hear from the staff that the commission has approved 2 LED signs at religious properties, Park East Synagogue and St. Ignatius Loyola Church. And one of those was, I think, within the last month or so. In both cases, there were existing static poster board signs. And so it was a swap out of those for LED signs, but there were 2 LED signs approved for those 2 properties.
And I know at the St. Mark's Church, we have also approved multiple signs on the fence. I'm not sure how many, if any of them were also LED or digital, but we have both signs there. Okay. Other questions? All right. Yeah, and I also, you know, I know this may have, because it has the grounds around it, may have more frontage and more pedestrian activity, which may or may not be related to the church, that changes the ability to view signs on this site. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to see if we have any testimony. If you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you, and we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance.
Okay, great. We have one person that signed up, George Calderaro. And George, I've just brought you in.
Hello again, George Calderaro from the Victorian Society. The BARD Act of 1956, the state enabling legislation for the New York City Landmarks Law, under whose aegis the Commission is operating today, was first proposed by Albert Bard in 1913. The law's origin had much to do with the desire to control rampant signs and advertising billboards in the city. 107 years later, signs and advertising are still running rampant. We ask how many signs are too many for the site of one of the most iconic and recognizable buildings in the city. The answer is clearly provided in this presentation. There are too many. As signs, they are designed to distract, and as a result, they detract from this landmark. But we reserve our strongest objection to the proposed digital signs. These overly bright and animated signs housed in bulky boxes have become inescapable in the city. They've even invaded our subway station interior landmarks, obscuring and detracting from the ornate station walls. Another place they do not belong is on the elaborate historic fence surrounding the 1846 Gothic Revival Trinity Church, one of the city's most important landmarks. There are signs that are necessary and appropriate in material, scale, and design for individual landmarks and this landmark. These are neither and should be rejected.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, and Rich, do we have any additional written testimony?
We do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 1, which recommended approval of the static signage proposal, but work with the staff on the digital displays to make them less striking.
Okay. All right. Jeff, would you like to respond to some of the comments?
Well, I agree with the gentleman who just spoke that this is an amazing historic iconic building in New York City, but at the same time, these signs are mission driven, and the mission of this church is critical to the institution itself, but also to the neighborhood and to people who work on Wall Street. And I think conveying all that this church has to offer and the mission-driven concerts and events and programs is important. And so, while I think we all agree it'd be great not to have these signs if possible, I think the reality is that having them enables the church to fulfill its mission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, I'm going to start unmuting or requesting to unmute you. Whoops. So that we can make a motion to close the hearing. And all right, Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, great. Okay, let's, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll now begin our discussion. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you like to start this one?
Sure. Well, I know that the Trinity Church is obviously very well recognized, but I'm actually finding that this level of signage, I'm finding it actually to be appropriate, given the busyness of Broadway and crowds, and the fact that people are coming from both directions. I don't really love the idea of digital displays, but I understand the need for them. So my hope would be that they would just worked very closely with staff to minimize the wiring, to reduce its visibility and the penetrations to the fence. But I think that these 4 displays on Broadway are appropriate. And I think the flags or the banners on Trinity Place are also appropriate. So I'm actually okay with this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think that the need of cultural and religious institutions to bring their programs to the public, to the community, is extraordinarily important. And for that reason, we need to permit signage. Personally, while the digital signage is, sometimes rather striking, obviously, because of its quality. At the same time, I think that it's an opportunity then to limit a proliferation of paper signs and other kinds of signs, and to make it possible to really focus the public on a location where they can find multiple programs. And I think that's a very important function. So I can approve this in this case, and I do think that also it's reversible and it's going to have no significant damage on the historic fabric. So I just think it's a necessity for this kind of institution, and in many ways it's actually preferable for the simple reason that it makes it possible to minimize the amount of signage on these facilities.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree. I think that it's noteworthy to observe that the LED signs are at the outboard edges of the property, so they're rather far away and will be experienced not as a pair, but as individuals at some distance from each other. I also think it's worth noting that they're fairly close to the ground, which is unusual, and therefore lessening their impact visually on the church behind. So I can find these appropriate.
Commissioner Devonshire?
I'm okay with the digital signage and the static, but I think one digital sign is adequate for this building.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
I think it's great that all of that clutter is going to be removed from around the church on the fence. And, this is what we've been approving, both for cultural and religious institutions. This church does have a very a ton of wonderful programming that it needs to get the messaging out about, and also a very extensive frontage. So and as Ann said, a very busy street. So I can approve this, both static and digital, and I would like to encourage the applicant to work with staff, because I do think it's important that the signage not be, overly colorful and dramatic, and just more informational.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I find it approvable.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Well, I've been leaning towards Commissioner Devonshire's point of view. However, I'm looking at this, the distance between these signs, and trying to, recall for myself how far apart they really are. I certainly wouldn't want this to be precedent for other churches to be using multiple signs on smaller properties, or multiple LED signs on smaller properties. I certainly expect then we will not be seeing any, not only are we getting rid of the clutter, but I'm hopeful that we're not going to be seeing the applicant coming back to put more clutter on this fence. So I can approve it as is.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Baran?
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Devonshire's point about one electronic sign sufficient? I think the others can be, there can be other static or two-dimensional, regular old signs. I would say, if I know they're not proposing exactly, but I could see another electronic one on the back, on the other side, but not on this face, just one.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and I am in support of this application. I do think that we've worked hard with Trinity Church, and I think that they are trying to really rationalize the signage. And I think the plan is not to have a proliferation in the future, and that the goal, they're proposing to remove some signage here, and the goal with the digital signs is to allow them to not have to have additional signage in the future. And I think that they are quite far apart from each other, and in terms of the extent and the activity along the street here, I don't think they'll really be seen in the context of each other. And as Commissioner Goldblum pointed out, I think they're low and won't obscure or detract from the view of the church itself. And I think the banners on the side on Trinity Place are consistent with the banners we already approved there, and that the cumulative number, the total number won't detract from that side of the landmark. And I do think this is not a precedent. I think this is a larger site than many of our other religious properties that we regulate. But I do think that it's very important that we think about the mission-related needs of these religious institutions as we regulate them, and as we continue to look for new religious properties to designate. So with that, let's, Commissioner Holford Smith, would you make a motion, and we'll take a vote and see where we are.
Yes. In the matter of LPC 21-02452, 75 Broadway, Trinity Church and Graveyard, an individual landmark. A Gothic Revival style church designed by Richard Upjohn and built in 1846. The application is to install signage. I recommend approval, finding that the removal of existing canvas signs at the fence along Broadway will eliminate clutter that detracts from the significant architectural features of the landmark. That the installation of the 4 box display signs, including 2 standard and 2 LED signs mounted on the historic Broadway fence, will occur at thicker posts that have been previously restored, and that the minor amount of drilling will be easily repaired if the installation is ever removed. That the proposed LED signs will feature programmable informational content, a modern version of traditional directories associated with religious buildings. That the LED programming will be limited to static images and a limited color palette. That the 4 vertical banners and posts will match 4 previously approved banner and post signs at the Trinity Place retaining wall and do not overwhelm the site or detract from the church building. That the vertical banners are a traditional form of signage often found on Gothic style religious and institutional buildings, and their placement at the rear of the site enlivens a foreboding sheer retaining wall, and that the cumulative amount of signage is unobtrusive relative to the scale of the building and the site.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Oh, he's recused.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron,
No.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
No.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson, you're muted.
No.
Oh.
Okay. And Commissioner Lutfi
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 6 in favor and 9 opposed and 1 recused, the motion carries.
Okay, that's approved. And please continue to work with the staff as you finalize this last portion of this project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move to the next hearing item. It's item number 7, LPC 20-07989, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan Block 180, Lot 7506, 13 Harrison Street in the Tribeca West Historic District. A utilitarian style store and loft building with neo-Grec elements designed by D&J Jardine and built in 1887. The application is to construct a rooftop addition.
We're just waiting on an applicant.
Yeah.
Edith, is the applicant here or?
The other member of the team is here. Mr. Salcedo, can you run through the presentation?
Mr. Salcedo, would you be able to start this presentation for us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I apologize. This is Bill Bialowski. We had a computer just crash on us at the most untimely of moments.
It's been happening to a lot of people today.
It's gremlins, I guess. I'm Bill Bialowski. I'm the architect for the owner of the upper floors of this building. It's a 2-family, 4-story home. And our proposal is for a 1-story north-facing glazed mansard attic story addition with bulkhead extension to a rooftop terrace, including a mechanical enclosure above. Am I controlling the screen?
Yes, if you could just click on this the slide that you see, and then you can advance it with the mouse or the arrow keys.
Thank you. This is the context for 13 Harrison Street. You can see it is identified with these hash marks, and you see it in the row alongside 15 and 17 Harrison. The Halliday family, which built this building, was in the liquor business, and they had previously owned 15 and 17 Harrison Street and hired the Jardines to design this building as an addition to their business. They copied almost all of the neo-Grec details from 15, 17 Harrison Street. They'll put their own cornice on top of this building so that it had its own personality. Sorry. These are just 2 sets of groups of images of previously approved by commissioners rooftop attic story additions that have glazed mansard roofs that are similar to artist lofts that were used in the beginning of this century to repurpose these utilitarian style buildings that had much smaller windows and in a pursuit of light. This is our proposal. It is this north-facing glazed clear story sloped glass that is bounded by 2 masonry brick walls on either side. And you can see how our volume here rendered in the middle of this image is mediating the height difference from the taller 11 Harrison Street down to these 3 utilitarian loft buildings. We've gone to great effort to try to adjust the size of this rooftop addition so that it's not visible from out on the street. As a part of this application, but to be reviewed at the staff level, is also a restoration of the canopy that we're showing here on the first floor. The materials that we're proposing for this project are glass on the north-facing glazed skylight, zinc metal panels for the bulkhead extension and aluminum louvers, and a masonry bearing walls to match the existing brick. We, of course, will be cleaning all of the marble and restoring the facade and replacing windows as well. These two slides tell the story. The existing condition is on the left. What we're proposing is on the right. We have worked hard to shape this addition to work to the sight line so it's not visible from out on the street on Harrison Street. Part of our proposal includes we're lowering the existing roof level a little bit so that we could get the height that we need to put our little addition on. You can see the back of the building. Our addition is 30 feet off the lot line, and this parapet wall is an existing parapet wall that goes to the bulkhead of our neighboring property. Here's a little volume study. There is an existing bulkhead with a sloping glass skylight that faces west, which we are removing. These are existing parapet walls, and this pretty much shows the form that we're adding. Here are photographs of our mock-up. And these are the views of walking down the street of Harrison Street of the mock-up. The mock-up is not visible from Hudson on Harrison Street until you get all the way down to the corner of Greenwich. It is a little bit visible in this image 4, which we're going to look at in a second, from the corner. And then when we get further off the corner, back here to image 5, where we are standing, this is in front of Independence Plaza, which has been pulled back off of its property line. That's where we get to see the mock-up the most. This is the closer image where we've dropped our rendering in on top of the mock-up. There's a little bit of plants here which we've tried to take out, but what you're really seeing here at this point from the corner is simply the mechanical enclosure to hide the rooftop equipment. When we get a little further back and we stand at the front door on the corner of Independence Plaza, a little more of the mock-up and of the rooftop addition is visible. You can see the louvers that are hiding the mechanical equipment, not unlike the boxes that are on the roofs of the existing neighboring buildings. A little bit of our bulkhead that gets us to the roof terrace. This is just a very slight edge of the masonry bearing wall that will be the party wall between us and the neighbor, and a little bit of the glass. This piece here is the parapet, the existing parapet wall. This is existing and proposed front elevations. The rear elevations, which we are working with the staff at staff level, we are filling back in an existing 4th floor that had been made into a roof terrace. We're bringing that back as enclosed space. This shows the rooftop addition, which is 30 feet off the lot line, and replacement of windows, and we're making one window into 2. These are the details of the beginning of the development of the technical issues. And I think that what's important to show here, is that what we're doing is we're hiding the brick forehead, the parapet that would be across the top of that glass by running the glass up to the top and bringing a little more light into this rooftop addition, which we'd worked hard to head back to the front to shape so that it was not visible from below, but to get as much maximum light as we can into this space, because that's the purpose of this. In this 2-family home, as the buildings had originally been constructed, had very small windows, which were for the purposes of the warehouse utilitarian purpose. But now as we've repurposed these buildings into a residential building, we need more light in the building than is available. I open this up to questions or comments.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? Okay, it was a very clear presentation, thank you. So I think we'll turn to public testimony and we may have questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And I'll turn it over to Lisa Korsavage to walk us through the testimony.
Okay, thank you. We have one person signed up to speak. That's Kelly Carroll. And Kelly, I've already brought you in.
Thank you. Just waiting for this. There we go. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. This application's design reference relies heavily on village-style artist studios, which are not found in Tribeca. The only precedent from within a Tribeca historic district is 377 Greenwich Street, which was constructed in 1989. Regardless, the proposed addition is too large and too visible. It should be set further back from the cornice, and the condenser units, which are driving much of the visibility, could easily find homes other than at the apex of this construction, such as against the neighboring building's wall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands up to speak.
Okay, and Rich, do we have any additional written testimony?
Yes, 1 second. Sorry, I had an internet issue here as well. Pulling up the resolution. We do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 1, which recommended approval of the application while working with the applicant to reduce the visible height of the addition. And we do have a letter from a neighbor in opposition to the project.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to turn it back to the applicant. Would you like to respond to the comments about the size or visibility or the condensing?
Yeah, yes. When we presented to the community board, we were the first story addition, or the attic story addition we were making, was 1 foot taller than is being presented today. And the bulkhead and mechanical area were another 1.5 foot taller. So since presenting to CB1 and working with the staff, we've lowered the top of the building 2.5 feet, and we have brought the rooftop addition from this floor level, oh boy, to the new addition down to 12 feet. So we've compressed this as much as we can for the value of what we're doing. And we also think that it behooves us to screen the mechanical units that are on this roof rather than expose them, and that we're somewhat improving and adding to the look from this long image of all the mechanical equipment that sits on top of all of our neighboring buildings as well.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? All right, not seeing any final questions. I'm going to start to unmute you so that we can make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Make a motion now to close the hearing.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
So moved.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think this proposal is very well done. The the addition is very discreet, and it's elevated in such a way that it's not visible from Harrison Street, and not that visible from far away. I agree that the mechanicals are well screened and also, were handled well in the project. And I think it works with the building, and it works within the context of the district.
Great. And sort of to follow up on your point, it's seen against the backdrop of the taller building and is in finishes, I think, that relate to those. Commissioner Jefferson?
I think it's appropriate. I think it works.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I agree. This kind of rooftop addition is really neighborhood specific and makes sense here. The visibility is only from an oblique angle. I do want to note that I do appreciate the applicant's presentation here. Not only was it brief and clear, which I'm always in love with, but the device they used to show us the magnification of the visibility, I thought was spectacular. We often are forced by applicants to, to use magnifying glasses to ourselves to figure out what the visibility is. And I wish that our staff would figure out how they did that and encourage others to do it. It was direct and honest, and I appreciate that.
Great, thanks. And we definitely can work, the staff can work to try to get presentations like that with that specific technique for future presentations. Commissioner Shamir Baran?
Yes, I'm in agreement with Kelly Carroll that this kind of rooftop addition is not typical. It's much more, as were the examples that the applicant showed us, related to the village than it is to this part of Tribeca. But I think that it does not sort of express the full extent of the adaptive reuse program, and in that sense, sort of, in other words, it's not. We don't know that it's residential and from this rooftop addition. And I think that that's interesting too, because it still has this kind of quasi work lit, sort of the life of the artist kind of idiom. I think that that's sort of makes sense, again, typologically to this neighborhood. So beyond that, I actually think that its minimal visibility is a positive thing, and that it's I think ultimately approvable. Thank you, and appropriate.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree. I think this is it's appropriate in this context. What you're seeing is sort of the same sort of rooftop accretions that proliferate through this district. So I find that it'll just blend in over time. So I find it appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I agree. It's in this particular context with the other rooftop accretions, and it's a smaller building. I think it's a reasonable solution, and I can approve it as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree. Appropriate.
And let me just see. I think Commissioner Devonshire had to leave, so he's gone. So Commissioner Bland?
Yes, appropriate. I just want to also comment approvingly that the applicant might have anticipated that we would have said, well, why don't you lower that top floor in order to reduce the height of the rooftop addition? But instead of waiting for us to tell him that might be a way to go, he did it. And so I think that's another way by which the rooftop addition is less visible. But of course, it is seen against the backdrop of much higher building next to it. So very, very appropriate.
Thank you. All right, so I think we all agree on this one. And so Commissioner Lutfi, would you make this motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 20-07989, 13 Harrison Street, Tribeca West Historic District, a utilitarian style store and loft building with neo-Grec elements designed by D&J Jardine and built in 1887. The application is to construct a rooftop addition. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special and historic character of the Tribeca West Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the construction of the addition will not damage or destroy any significant historic fabric, that the addition will not be visible directly over the primary facade on Harrison Street, that the addition's sloped profile and metal and glass infill framed by brick masonry will recall historic skylights often found on buildings of this type and will help the addition recede from view. The dark gray railings will screen mechanical equipment and are consistent with utilitarian rooftop accretions often found on buildings in this historic district and will be seen from the east against the backdrop of a much taller building. And that the presence of the addition will not overwhelm or detract from the building or the historic district.
Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. And we'll move to the next item.
Okay, the next item is number 8, LPC 21-01565, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1021, lot 19, 619 Broadway, the Brill Building, individual landmark. An Art Deco style office building designed by Victor A. Bark Jr. and built in 1930 to 31. The application is to install signage.
And Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Please note that staff will be presenting the components of the proposal, and the applicants are available for a brief comment and questions following the presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Marcello Pacheco, Preservation Staff. The item before you is 1619 Broadway, Brill Building, located on the corner of Broadway and West 49th Street, adjacent to Times Square. The building was constructed in 1930 and historically featured advertising and billboard signage. There's also a recent history of new billboards and illuminated signage reviewed and approved by the Commission, which I will briefly summarize. In 2010, the Commission reviewed and approved the proposal shown on the rendering to the right, featuring signage installed on trellis work at the second and third floors, upper corner of the building, and at the roof, all externally illuminated. In 2014, a revised proposal was presented to the Commission, which is shown in the rendering on the right. This slide shows a comparison of the total proposed signage square footage in 2010 versus 2014, which represented a reduction. This slide shows the final approved LED signage types and locations as approved in 2014. In 2018, the approval was amended to omit the northernmost LED sign and trellis work at the second floor, location H, which is shown here. There is no future signage proposed in this particular location. Now, the current proposal is to install a bracket sign at the pier adjacent to the previously omitted LED sign, featuring branding for commercial tenant below, mounted vertically at 4 attachment points, as shown in the section elevation to the right. The sign will be internally illuminated, and also shown here are the dashed red lines indicating sign location H, which was omitted as part of that prior amendment I mentioned. This view shows the proposed bracket sign in context with the previously approved signage at the building. There are additional rendered views. Here are some additional rendered views to the north and the south along Broadway. The applicants are here to give a brief statement and are available to answer any questions regarding the proposal.
Okay, did the applicants want to say something?
Yeah, this is Paul Prue, Land Use Counsel to TD Bank, joined by a representative from the bank and our architect for the signage. We'd just like to briefly point out in the context of the existing history that you've just heard about, that the proposed bracket sign is 2.9 feet by 16 as opposed to the previously approved 11.5 by 26.5 foot LED sign. So this represents a significant reduction over previously approved condition. And it's in keeping with those prior approvals, which reference the ad hoc sign treatment and the sort of honky-tonk nature of Times Square and the signage in the neighborhood. In keeping with that location and the history of electrification and projecting signs here, marquees, which existed in this building, we think this proposed bracket sign is appropriate. And then it's also, if you'll turn to the last slide, not dissimilar from the Paramount building, which is another individually designated Times Square adjacent landmark that has a bunch of bracket signs. So with that, this is just a de minimis addition. And the community board, which I expect hear from shortly, was supportive for that reason. But they did mention that they wish to see that the master plan be altered to take away the right to revert to the signage that was previously approved. As you just heard, though, that was removed by amendment in 2018. So that concern is not a concern. They also wanted to see that the bracket sign be located in a way that was not harmful to the building. And we think that this is a nice trade-off relative to the alternative, which might be installing a sign in the brass louvers that exist over the storefront. And that's all we have to add, unless you'd like specific information about the connections of the sign to the building or about TD Bank.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions right now. I think we'll move to testimony, and we might have questions after that. Oh, actually, Commissioner Jefferson, did you have a question? Okay, I think that might have, he might have a question later. So we'll move to public testimony, and I'll turn it over to Lisa Kersavage to walk us through that testimony. If you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. Thank you.
And we did not have anybody sign up to speak, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. All right. Rich, do we have any written testimony? I imagine the community board resolution.
Yes, we do have the community board resolution. They recommended denial unless the official master plan is altered by LPC to replace sign H with a new illuminated bracket sign so as to retain the same number of permitted signage. And the illuminated bracket sign is installed employing in the least intrusive method possible to avoid puncture wounds and penetration points in the building. The existing door handle / door pulls are stored for future use by a future tenant at a future date.
Okay, and the hardware is not before us today, that on the doors. So as the applicant stated, the community board had wanted to ensure that the last sign that was approved in the 2014 approval not be installed, and that this be installed. If this is installed, it's in lieu of that sign. And I think that Mr. Prudy said that's the case.
Correct.
Okay. Any other final comments you'd like to make before we begin our discussion?
Not from the applicant team.
Okay. Commissioners, any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Holford Smith, please go ahead.
My question was about that sign that is stated to not be installed in the future. It appears that the bracket for it, the truss work is installed. Is that going to stay on the building, or will that be removed?
Our understanding is that has been removed already, and the red lines are simply there to identify where it is relative to the proposed sign.
Okay, so this photograph is not perhaps accurate in that depiction.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other final questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson, do you have a question?
Yes. Why 16 feet? Why is it so tall? Why couldn't it be 10 or 9?
I think that there is a judgment call made relative to the size of the second story and where it begins and ends. This is of course Times Square, so the need to stand out and to go a little higher than say 10 in this case, we felt justified.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I'm going to start to unmute or request to unmute you so that we can close the hearing. All right, and Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
I move to close the hearing.
Okay, and Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, and all in favor of closing the hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. So we'll now move to our discussion. And as Marcello presented, this is a building that the commission has approved a lot of illuminated signage on because of its proximity to Times Square and the historic, which wasn't necessarily shown, I think, in detail in this presentation, but in previous presentations, it was shown that historically this building had active and animated signs that related to Times Square. And so the commission's prior approvals allowed for signs on the facades at the second and third floor, as well as storefront signage, and then signage further up on the facade and on the roof. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion about wanting to be sure that there was an ad hoc quality to the signs, as the applicant mentioned, as that was the sort of historic condition, that they were sort of ad hoc and added within a variety of places and sizes. So the application today eliminates, or has one group sign that was under the previous approval has already been eliminated, and the application is to replace that one sign with a tenant sign that's a vertical internally illuminated blade sign. And it's at the northern end of the building. So why don't we just start our discussion? Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
Yes, it's interesting to me because I'm new in the commission. I did not know that the ad hoc quality of signage in Times Square, and I understand why that was done. And I think this proposal is fine. I just thought it was a little too tall for, where in relationship to the concept, the building itself. But I think it's fine, based on the information that we need signs and the one thing about it that I do like is its simplicity. It's not as pronounced as the one to the right, the food sign. So it has a simplicity and elegance to it. So I can approve it.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Or the Times Square or no Times Square, the Brill Building has suffered the death of a million cuts here. It's just too bad we really can't undo the brutal treatment of this building. But this particular sign, to quote the applicant, is de minimis, and so I think it's appropriate as is.
Thanks. And Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I do as well. Appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree. I think it's appropriate and minimal.
Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I can support this.
Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum.
I can support it, but I think that, remembering back to our conversations about the Brill Building and the 1,000 cuts, we worked pretty hard to try, when the revision came in, the second revision, to have the signage organized in such a way that it exposed the maximum amount of historic decorative material, and to kind of try to reinforce the architectural design of the base of the building. I think that in this regard, the blade sign, while appropriate in size, should not be located on an architectural pilaster, and should be located, in the area where the other signage is, in my opinion.
You mean over a window as opposed to?
Yeah, over anywhere else, really. I mean, the whole thing is try to, make a mess, but keep the architecture visible. And I think that this one, unfortunately, picks the one spot where the architecture is there, So.
Yeah, I think I do recall we had a lot of conversations about preserving the spandrel between the first and second floors.
Right.
So that's why I wonder if moving it from the pier to a window would actually.
It was kind of a different conversation because the signs were really kind of very asymmetrical and very large. And so they would have, here, when you've got this new master plan in that had everything kind of lined up to accord with the floor lines, more or less, and the spandrel was very clearly delineated. And with this being a blade sign that's relatively skinny, I think that I'd rather see the impact on the spandrel than on the pilaster.
Okay.
Just my comment. If everyone else is going along with it, I'll vote with it.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Well, I understand that. Okay. Commissioner Bland.
I'm okay with it as is.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi.
Okay with it as is, although I could go along with Michael's suggestion. I do also just want to give some credit to the applicant because they've been before us a number of times recently, and I appreciate the fact that the gestures that they make in terms of signage overall compared to some others that we've seen are more measured. And so keep up the work.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think I had been sort of thinking along the lines of reducing the height, but I also can see how Commissioner Goldblum's suggestion might work because it is thinner, even if it extends into the spandrel area. But I do think we have enough support for it as is. So I think 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I think we have enough for it as is. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you make that motion? Commissioner Jefferson, do you have the motions in front of you? Are you're muted?
I said all that without. Oh, I'll start all over. In the matter of LPC-21-01565, 1619 Broadway, the Grid Building, individual landmark, an Art Deco style office building designed by Victor A. Bark Jr. and built in 1931. Application is to install signage. I recommend approval with modifications finding.
No.
that
It's just, I
installation-
think it's Commissioner Jefferson. I think it's straight
Yes.
approval.
Oh.
Just the approval.
Just the approval. Oh.
The first set of findings.
Staff recommend, it says, I just approve, I'm lost.
Yeah. So you would start at the installation of the proposed signage.
Okay,
And
we
then
can go with that.
just- yeah, and then just there's 1, 2, 3, 4 findings.
Okay, that the installation of the proposed signage will not eliminate any historic fabric, that the bracket sign will be installed at the plain masonry pier, utilizing the minimum necessary penetration and thereby minimizing the impact of historic fabric, that the presence of the illuminated sign will be in keeping with the Times Square location of the individual landmark, as well as with the character of the various electrified and illuminated signs that exist on this building at different times. I will not call undue attention in itself due to its proximity to and relationship with existing illuminated signing at this individual landmark, and that this installation will not overwhelm or diminish the historic character of the building.
And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
You.
Thank you very much, everyone.
We're going to move to item number 9, LPC 20-09067, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1892, Lot 62, 328 West 108th Street in the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2. A Renaissance Revival style row house designed by James and Leo and built in 1898 to 99. The application is to legalize the application of an elastomeric coating to the facade in non-compliance with Certificate of No Effect 19-37925.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Note that staff will be presenting the components of the proposal and the applicants are available for questions following. You may begin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Michelle Crarin, preservation staff. This application is to legalize the application of a waterproofing coating to the facade in non-compliance with Certificate of No Effect 19-37925 at 328 West 108th Street. Just waiting for the slides to advance.
Here, try clicking on it again.
Okay. Let's see. All right.
Michelle, I can advance them.
Okay, yeah, it's not moving for me at all. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so this property is located on the south side of 108th Street between West End Avenue and Riverside Drive in the Riverside West End Historic District Extension 2. Slide 3, please. This is a contextual elevation of the building, the westernmost of a row of 3. Next slide. And this slide shows some of the context of this block, which features row houses on both the south and north sides, bookended by large apartment buildings. Next slide. Okay, and this slide shows the 1940s tax photo showing the original unpainted facades at this row. On the right is the specification sheet for the waterproofing product used by the contractor at this building. You can see that's a Coronado Texcrete. Next slide. The photos on the upper half of this slide show the building before the work was completed. The facade was painted prior to the designation of the historic district. And then the lower half shows the facade after completion of the work, as well as a sample removal of the coating and underlying paint, which was completed by the contractor at LPC's request. Next slide. And then this slide shows some additional context within the historic district. Staff would like to note that of the photos shown, only the 2 buildings on 108th Street appear to have been painted previously. The others are just lighter brick or terracotta buildings also in the historic district. And the applicant is here to answer your questions and discuss the proposal in more detail.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Jeff Sherman. I'm the architect of record for 328 West 108th Street. Could you go back to the previous slide? I think that's maybe the one to focus on. If the first rule of preservation is to do no harm, we would urge the commission to vote to accept the coating on the building. The building's one of a trio of matching painted row houses. Given that our primary concern for the paint was matching the existing color, our performance spec was for a breathable water-based paint for exterior masonry, and unfortunately what the contractor used met all the criteria except the most critical one, that of paint. He used an elastomeric coating. We had the contractor test the strip that you see in the bottom right corner, and he was able to remove the coating and the paint underneath. Staff was satisfied with this sample and would like the rest of the brick to match this, but we were not satisfied. We've seen too many examples of stripping and power washing, eroding the fire skin of brick walls. In our experience, unglazed brick is especially vulnerable to the damage from these interventions. Exterior bricks can start to powder a year after paint removal. 2 wrongs, we think, don't make a right. Our primary goal at this point should be to preserve the facade and do no further harm. The building looks like its neighbors. The coating is quite thin and looks like paint, and there are several painted buildings on the block. The community board, I know it's not their decision, but they were unanimously in favor of keeping the coating, and several board members described actually visiting the building in person and called the work beautiful. Stripping down the building down to the bare brick is not only contrary to LPC's approved repainting of the facade, it's unnecessarily reckless in our opinion, and we hope you'll agree and vote to leave the coating in place. Thank you.
Sarah, you're muted.
Thank you. So just to clarify the last statement by the applicant about our being contradictory to our policies, if a building is painted at the time of designation, which this one was, as a matter of regular maintenance, property owners can repaint in the same color without an LPC permit. And then with an LPC permit can continue to repaint as a matter of maintenance in a color that matches the underlying masonry. Staff, however, is not authorized to approve waterproof coatings, which have the potential to make the building have even more difficulty breathing than an application of paint would, which also limits its breathability to some extent. So this is before us today because it's the type of coating it is. Okay, Commissioner Goldblum, you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to dig a little bit deeper into that. In the absence of our cohort, Commissioner Devonshire, we're left to our own devices. The ignorant.
Can we call him?
Well, we have also another architect on the commission who's specialized in materials and conservation of materials, and that's Commissioner Holmes.
I'd love to hear their input, but I just wanted to ask a little bit. When you did the stripping, did you find that the underlying brick had lost its wear coat?
No, we did not find that the underlying brick had any visible damage. But in our experience, that visible damage can take several months to appear, and it's the weakening of that coating that I'm most concerned about, not the immediate degradation of the fire skin.
And the paint or the elastomeric coating that was applied, it is breathable?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions at the time. So why don't we move to public testimony? And if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your hand and Lisa will walk us through the testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have two people that signed up in advance, so I'm going to call them first. Landmark West. And please just everybody state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee vehemently opposes legalizations of work installed without LPC permits, or in this case, in deference to a certificate of no effect. When property owners ignore the Landmarks law and make changes without the Commission's guidance and consent, it all too frequently, the results are at best unremarkable and at worst, in this case, destructive. In either case, the practice of legalizing alterations after the fact, in essence, penalizes property owners who often go to great lengths to comply with the landmarks regulations by rewarding those who flout the law. The LPC has clear rules against elastomeric coatings because they literally suffocate the building to the point where they cannot breathe. This coating will continue to need its own maintenance, requiring added layers of caked-on makeup over this facade, further exacerbating the owner-imposed hardship at hand. Worse yet, the longer it remains in situ, the more damage it will do by extending the duration of any trapped moisture from escaping and further deteriorating the brick and clips. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee requests that the unsanctioned coating be removed as soon as possibility and further evaluation of the underlying masonry be inspected before further action is permitted. For the sake of this landmark, which cannot speak for itself and is currently gagged by elastomeric coating, the Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee strongly requests denial of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, George Calderaro.
George Calderaro, Victorian Society, New York.
The Victorian Society suggests that the decision about how to proceed should be based on conservation science. That is, an independent professional investigation should be made. This should include analysis of the material applied and whether it may itself cause harm to the building over time, whether and how it can be safely removed, and what the condition of the underlying masonry is and what might be required to protect it once the coatings are removed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, we have Michelle Parker. Okay, Michelle, I've brought you in. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
And turn on your camera if you choose.
Thank you. Michelle Parker, good afternoon. I'm a co-chair of the CB7 Manhattan's Preservation Committee, where this application is located. We approached this application from a visual inspection perspective. And while we do not encourage painting brick limestone, we saw nothing ungainly about the finished work that we personally saw. And we found that in no way detracts from the facades of other buildings on this block or in the historical. However, CB7 defers to LPC with respect to the technical questions concerning the efficacy and long-term appropriateness of the use of elastomeric coatings on a structure such as the subject building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. Rich, do we have any written testimony?
No other additional written testimony, no.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sherman, would you like to respond to the comments?
The one point I would like to make is with regard to elastomeric coatings, wide variety of different specifications out there. This one is a breathable elastomeric coating, so it is not choking the brick and it is not trapping moisture. It is designed to allow moisture to evaporate right through its surface.
All right, other final questions? Not seeing any questions, I'm going to start to unmute everyone or request to unmute. So look for that message so we can close the hearing. All right, and Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion? Or let's say Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we're going to begin our discussion. And as I laid out, this is really before us because of the type of coating that was used. And so I will ask Commissioner Holford Smith, since you have experience with materials conservation, if you would like to start this one.
Sure. I would have relied on Michael Devonshire as being an actual conservator, but in his absence. My instinct would be to say that the coating should be removed, but I think that there should be an independent conservator brought in to advise, because this coating might be okay. It's 22.3 perms, and I'm not an expert, so I don't know where that is in the range of permeability. I think visually it appears to. It gives the building a monolithic appearance, which it didn't originally have, because the brick and the terracotta would have had slightly different tones to them, and so it would have read very differently. So it has changed the architectural expression of the building, and it could have put the building in danger if it's not permeable enough. It's always preferable to not have a coating on masonry if you can do it. So I think that there are tests that you can do to the brick to determine whether it has suffered. You can do Ryland tests to see how much water absorption it has, that a conservator could do on the test example, and perhaps do other test strippings to see what they determine. But just in general speaking, I would prefer not to see a coating on brick and stone like this.
Commissioner Goldblum. Oh, sorry, I skipped Commissioner Chapin.
I agree that it's extremely important to protect the fabric of the building, and not being an expert in the effects of this particular kind of coating. I think it's that we need the best information we can get as to whether this coating can be removed safely. And if it would be better for the building, obviously I would like to see it removed. If not, then we'll have to, I guess, let it continue and hope that it has minimal, relatively low damage. But I'd like to be more convinced that that removing it would not is not possible without damaging the brick. Because if it is possible to safely remove it, that's what should be done.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. I think that it's an interesting situation. I think we're here because of the staff rule that allows for repainting. And I think that repainting was allowed for staff because of concerns related to damaging of the brick. The brick under a painted surface could be damaged and could suffer long-term impacts to the building. So everyone's focus on the brick's condition is appropriate. However, I don't think anybody would say that it is preferable from a preservation perspective, if it can be determined that the brick is fine and will be fine, that painting is an acceptable intervention. I think painting is clearly not preferable. Stripping is preferable if it results in a building that will have longevity. But that's really a super technical issue. Mr. Sherman raises a valid concern, and I think Ann's solution is a good one. If an independent conservator can be brought to bear, that would provide certification that either the elastomeric material is acceptable, or that the brick is I would just suggest a reorientation of the way that the conservator be used, with the first preference being stripping. If they can be safely stripped, and Mr. Sherman's concern allayed about the longevity of the brick, then that would clearly be the preferable outcome. If that is not the case, if it is possible that they would be degraded by having a stripping applied to them, then I think that a coating, whether elastomeric or otherwise, could be acceptable if it was technically shown to not be harmful.
All right, Commissioner Bland.
Tricky here. Certainly I'm no expert either. Anne is our reigning expert at the moment, and she suggested basically not taking a position until we have a third-party expert. So I put that aside, and then I listened to her say, but painting has changed the visual character of the building. But if I heard properly, the building had already been painted. Is that correct or not?
Yes,
that is
it was
correct.
painted at the time of designation.
Right. Okay. So that's also, I think, an irrelevant issue. It was our. So I don't know where to. I think we just. I don't know where to stand here. I would like to have the expert, I think, at this point, come in and help us through this. And so I can't really have a position.
All right, Commissioner Lutfi.
I would feel more comfortable if we had an expert come in.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I think it should be removed. I think the coating should be removed.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson.
Not to put words in anyone else's mouth, but I think that the point being made about the change in the physical character of the building is that because it was an elastomeric coating, its thickness or its density is what changed the physical character of the building, and that ordinary painting would not. But that's someone else's comment. What I'm hearing here is I did something in violation of an approval, and maybe correcting it is destructive. So I got you. And I can't accept that. I think the assumption here has to be that we would not have approved this in the first place. So we deny this application to start, and I leave it to our counsel to tell us what the next step is after that. You know, preservation is not merely a look. Preservation is literally preservation. If it means we're going to end up taking this coating off, and we have to do something else to this building to make sure that it's actually protected, it may be several steps before we get to the place we needed to be if it simply had been done right in the first place. And I do take exception to the reference to our staff as reckless. I've never heard anyone ever say that before, and I really don't want to ever hear it again.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
So firstly, I think the first sentence that the applicant said was that preservation first law is to do no harm. I never actually heard that. I don't, but obviously it had harm on his brain and mind because it's been harmed, it seems. I am not comfortable with removing this material because I don't know that it won't further damage the building. On the other hand, I do think that, you know, if people do things that are kind of contrary to our rules, there should be some form of penalty. But I don't, again, I would agree with Commissioner Gustafson that I'd like to hear from council about that. But I'm not comfortable with removing this yet, or asking them to remove it without having real expert advice. And then in terms of when removed, for it to be done so kind of methodically that, in other words, not just in a rough way, get the stuff off, but in some way that really tests every single segment, or really does it in a very careful way.
Okay. All right. Thank you all, commissioners. I think that, you know, I mean, we as a commission really discourage painting and coating of masonry buildings. And, you know, the exception is, as we've stated, when buildings are already painted, masonry buildings are painted prior to designation. And that is, you know, again, because it's regular maintenance and the full removal might cause more damage. There's been some testing here. And I think that in addition, as was stated also, I think the elastomeric coating has, even though the paint also has a monolithic quality, I think the thickness of the coating also can change the physical characteristics of the building. So I think, generally speaking, the commission as a body and a group today would prefer to see this paint, this coating removed. But in order to be comfortable that it won't cause damage, we would like you to consult an expert, a conservationist, to do enough testing and evaluation to determine the appropriate method for removal. And if removal is possible, the appropriate method for removal. And if that's the case, then ultimately we can issue a staff level permit for that removal. So I think we'll take no action today and hope that you're able to resolve that. Mike, Commissioner Goldblum, please go ahead.
I just had a general question. In the past, has our staff functioned as the arbiter of these technical matters, or is this is the first time I recall us referring something to a third-party expert?
Yeah.
What's our usual path on that?
Yeah, I mean, our staff has a certain amount of technical expertise as well, so I don't want to, you know, ignore that. I think we have a lot of expertise on the staff, and you know, as you know, the years go by and the materials change, and there are new developments in the materials, and things are promoted to be more breathable than they used to be. In our experience, we found that they are never 100% breathable, and that there are both sort of physical and breathability issues with these materials. And you know, we have certainly oversaw the sort of quality control on paint removal and have been able to evaluate that in the field. So we can do that as well. But I think, we want to make sure that we are working with a person who, a professional who is experienced. So maybe not a conservator, but an experienced professional with these types of materials and the underlying materials. And that in conjunction with our staff, I think we can come to a good resolution.
I guess the only point I would make then is that in directing the applicant, we're directing him not to obtain a document from a consultant that the staff feels obliged to abide by, but rather that will be given to the staff for them to evaluate whether or not it meets their standards and that they're convinced by it. So we leave in their hands the judgment.
That's right.
Good.
And if the staff is unable to determine the safety of the removal, which, and they see applications like this all the time. The staff is very familiar with the various products for removal and specifications and appropriate water pressure for removals, and other, newer techniques for removals. So, but if it is something that the staff doesn't feel comfortable with, we'll simply bring it back to the full commission. Commissioner Holford-Smith?
Also, I'm not sure if we know the method by which they took the paint off in this case. So that's something also to be considered is what was used. It should not have been just a high pressure, water blasting this paint off. Some kind of chemical that has been proven to be safe for this kind of brick. So there are two factors to it. How do you remove it? And then what is that done to the brick? And then, or can this coating, is it breathable enough to leave on the brick?
Right. Okay, so we'll work with the applicant at staff level if removal is a possibility, and we feel comfortable with the specifications for the method of removal and the end result. That can be ultimately handled at staff level. If there are still questions, we can ask the applicant to come back and we can examine the new materials and tests that they've undertaken. So we'll take no action today, and thank you all, and ask Mr. Sherman to continue to work with the staff.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on to item number 10. This is LPC 19-41326, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1336, lot 10, 321 East 43rd Street in the Tudor City Historic District, a Tudor Revival style apartment building designed by the Fred French Company and built in 1927 to 28. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
And commissioners, applicants have joined the hearing. Note that staff will be presenting components of the proposal and applicants are available for questions. And staff, you may begin. Remember to unmute yourself, Elizabeth.
Good morning, good afternoon, commissioners. Elizabeth Diker, preservation staff. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. The applicant team for 321 East 43rd Street is seeking approval for the installation of aluminum replacement windows at the primary facade of this building. This work is part of a larger application for the establishment of a master plan for window replacement and HVAC installation. Please note the window replacement proposed at the rear and courtyard facades, as well as the HVAC component of this master plan, do adhere to our staff level rules. Just waiting for my slide to change here.
Should have control, so if you could just try the arrow keys. Okay, there you go.
Here we are. So here's 321 East 43rd Street. At the primary facade, the applicant team is proposing to replace the existing historic multi-light steel windows with aluminum replacement units that will match the historic windows in terms of operation, configuration, and finish. The glazing diminution, however, for these proposed primary facade replacement windows is greater than 10%, as we can see on this slide. Therefore, the replacement windows would require commission level approval. On this slide, we can see that the loss of glazing from the historic steel window to the proposed aluminum replacement units is between about 12 and 16% per window type. Notably, the windows that the applicants are proposing to install, Skyline DL97 series, were previously approved by the commission at other Tudor City apartment buildings, including 25 Tudor City Place and 5 Tudor City Place. As we go through these slides, we can see the different multi-light steel windows at the primary facade of East 43rd, 321 East 43rd Street that the applicant team is proposing to replace with the aluminum replacements. Here we can see the section and details of the existing historic steel windows, followed up by the sections of the proposed aluminum replacement units. There is, as I noted, a HVAC component to this master plan that we can approve at staff level. These windows allow for the installation of a very minimal T-bar and then a very small through window louver, which will match up with this portable air conditioning unit inside. This final slide, in addition to showing that rendered staff level HVAC component, I wanted to point out that this image in the upper right-hand side is the proposed windows as installed at 25 Tudor City Place. The applicants are here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you, Liz. Commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? All right, not seeing any questions. I think we'll move to testimony. If you're here in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I'll turn it over to Lisa Kersavage to run us through the testimony.
Okay, great. We had one person sign up to speak, and that's Kelly Carroll. And Kelly, I brought you in already.
Thank you, Lisa. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. This building, known as the Cloister, has its original steel windows from 1928. The proposed aluminum replacements are inappropriate for a master plan, which will codify a substandard material and the loss of steel's slender sight lines for good. In short, if we can't have steel casement windows in Tudor City, Manhattan, then where? Thank you.
And I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
Okay, and Rich, do we have written testimony?
We do have a resolution from Manhattan Community Board 6. They have no objection to the application.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to turn to the applicant and see if they would like to respond to the comments we heard in testimony.
This is Doug Lane, Lane Engineering. Yeah, so we understand the thought that the casement windows, the steel casement windows, provide a more slender look. But these windows were designed after years of development with Skyline to come to the closest available look of the Tudor City, original Tudor City windows, and they are intended to be meet the requirements of energy conservation, as well as meeting the look of Tudor City. So we've tried to work within the rubric of the previous applications that have been approved, and we hope that the look of our air conditioning louver would actually help to push it along to be even better looking, which is a minimal louver, air conditioning louver that the building is on board with, to include the internal air conditioners to help to minimize that unfortunately a bulky look of a window installed air conditioner.
Okay, thank you. And I see we do have a question. Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead.
Yes, a technical question. Can steel windows can they solve the energy issue? I mean, can we design a steel window that can be efficient as an aluminum window, or is there some issue with steel itself that it cannot be done? I mean, I've heard this for years now, and I don't quite understand why we can't use steel windows. They would never meet the energy requirement.
Are you? Go ahead. I'm
That
sorry.
addressed to the architect or to the staff, Commissioner?
Yeah, to anybody. I guess information.
I'll just speaking from the staff's perspective. I mean, we have seen applications for modern steel windows that have thermally broken frames and insulated glass. However, I think in our experience, they kind of have some of the same issues with dimensional changes that doing them in aluminum would in many cases. But it is possible. But I would also say, just for background, that this particular exact window has been approved several times in this historic district on buildings that are quite similar. So this is not the first time the commission has seen this. There are at least 3 or 4 other buildings that I'm aware of where this exact window has been approved by the commissioners at a hearing and then since installed. But it does indeed, the reason it's before you today is because there are some dimensional differences from the historic steel windows at the some of the sight lines, like at the jams and the heads. But otherwise, it would meet the level criteria for staff level approval.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Corey said, I think we did have at one point window manufacturers bring in samples for the commission to evaluate, and we had a steel, aluminum, and fiberglass window, all thermally broken, energy efficient. They all had sort of equal changes in dimension. There were various pieces that changed dimensionally, so they weren't all the same pieces, but the variation in dimensions was typical among all 3. And in fact, the steel windows, because they're made differently now, had a flatter profile and in some ways the aluminum windows could match the historic profile a little bit better.
Is that the Starrett Lehigh?
Sorry?
That was for Starrett Lehigh?
We had giant window samples in the hearing room for a couple of months. I think it actually was before Starrett Lehigh's application.
The thing about Starrett Lehigh's that I remember was I was amazed that they could get the profiles down to more or less equal the other profiles, which is going back to here. It's that meeting rail here that's really fat. And so it's probably just a different manufacturer. That was Graham, which is a very fancy manufacturer, and this is Skyline, which is not that high end. There may just be that issue, but I'll bet you if you dug around you could find a slimmer one, but whatever.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any final questions? And then we can then move to the discussion and continue this. Okay, so I don't see any final questions. So why don't we just close the hearing and move to our discussion. So I'm unmuting you or requesting to unmute you. And Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so the hearing is, and any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed, and so I think we can continue that discussion. And I believe, Michael, that when we had the 3 samples in the hearing room, we were looking at a skyline window. This skyline window that is used to replicate steel casement windows has very good profiles, although thicker in dimension. But as I said, all 3 samples had variations in the dimensions, and none of them replicated the original thinness. We have seen Graham windows as well as panorama windows for this, but the skyline window has been approved in many buildings in historic districts that originally had steel casement windows as a replication, including this particular complex. And in this case, they have tried to figure out a solution to the mechanical equipment, the HVAC equipment as well. So Michael, since we're sort of in that discussion, do you want to pick it up from there?
Sure. I just FYI, I thought that Graham got the job for the Star at Lehigh. They put it in all their advertising, but maybe I'm anyway, I think this is fine. I think this is fine. I do think that the meeting rail is a bit fat, but I think that the fact that I think for a complex like this, uniformity is important. Something that I generally don't say in this situation, but because it's all a complex, the fact that it was previously approved and that this will create greater harmony over the complex is in and of itself an important value.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Bland?
I agree. I think this has been approved before in buildings very similar to this, probably at Tudor City. And this should also be able to be approved today.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree. I've seen the approved buildings, the approved windows, and they look good. And it's really rough in this whole complex because in these buildings, so many windows are deteriorated. It's great that the buildings are moving forward to do master plans so they can have an effective, efficient, and energy efficient replacement scheme. I think I have to compliment the building for having that little louver with that in place. I've seen them in-room air conditioner. You know, these apartments are not big, so that takes up a lot of room during the summer. So kudos to the building for coming to us with this solution.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson, are you there? Just, can you accept my?
It's been used in that context before, so it's approvable.
Okay. Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
And Commissioner Shamir Barron.
I think they should maintain steel windows. If you can tell, I have a little bias about steel windows behind me. And if this building on Irving and Gramercy were to change to a master plan, I'd be devastated because it's somehow the building is somehow sliced and pulled out of the historic district. So these should remain steel windows in Tudor City.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Well, I'm kind of torn, but I can accept it because we have previously approved this window for similar buildings in this district or in this area.
Okay. All right. So I think Commissioner Goldblum, despite your concern about the meeting rail, are you comfortable making this motion? Commissioner Goldblum?
All right.
Okay.
Regarding 321 East 43rd Street, Tudor City Historic District, the application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. I note that the style, scale, materials, and details of the building are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Tudor City Historic District, and I recommend approval, finding that the existing steel casement windows are deteriorated and in a condition that warrants replacement. The proposed multi-pane aluminum casement windows will match the original steel multi-pane casement windows in terms of configuration, operation, and finish. The proposed windows will recall the profiles of the historic windows. That the proposed windows are configured to allow for the installation of temporary seasonal air conditioning vents. That the establishment of a master plan for window replacement will ensure consistent window treatment throughout the building. That the proposed work is supportive of the architectural and historic character of the building and the Tudor City Historic District.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
And Rich, will you call the vote?
Yes. Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
No.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
and Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 8 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
And we'll move to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is number 11. This is LPC 21-00271, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1127, Lot 44, 18 West 75th Street in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. A Renaissance revival in Queen Anne style row house designed by John C. Byrne and built from 1889 to 1890. The application is to construct a stoop and entrance and modify the areaway.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Staff will be presenting components of the proposal, and the applicants are available for questions and comments afterwards. Staff, you now have control of the slides, and you may begin.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Gina Posner from the Preservation staff, and I'll be presenting this application for 18 West 75th Street. The applicant is also present to make a brief conclusion and to answer any questions. The scope of this application is to modify the facade and areaway and including constructing a stoop, parlor floor entrance, and areaway walls. The building was converted to a basement level entry prior to designation, and at that point, the interior floor level at the parlor was raised by 23 inches. As no change to the interior floor level is currently proposed, the proposed stoop has adjustments in slope and number of treads to meet the existing floor height. This shows the current conditions here without the stoop, and the historic conditions. 18 West 75th Street is the building with the straight stoop seen here in the 1940s tax photo. This streetscape shows the existing condition of the building and its context. The building is part of a row of 4, with the 2 directly to its west having intact stoops. Although these are L-shaped stoops, they have detailing that match the historic detailing at the straight stoop that existed at 18 West 75th Street. And these photos show some additional views of the existing conditions. This survey shows the existing front yard line at 18 West 75th Street, shown with this red dotted line here. The proposed stoop and areaway wall will not cross this line. And these images show other stoops on the block. The L-shaped stoops seen here are part of this row. The straight stoop is not. This slide shows the existing views on the left and the proposed views on the right. The new masonry stoop, entrance surround, and areaway walls will be clad with brownstone stucco. With the tax photo and proposal side by side here, you can see the overall layout of the stoop, airway walls, and entrance surround as compared to the historic conditions. These will match the historic elements in design except for the following differences. The stoop is taller, meeting the existing modern first floor level, and will not extend past the existing front yard line with the associated change in slope and stair treads. The cheek walls will be taller and include anchored planters, complying with fall protection regulations, and the newel posts will be smaller. As the floor level is higher, the parlor floor entrance opening is correspondingly smaller, and the applicants are proposing to install the paired doors seen here without a transom. The areaway walls are taller, feature posts, and at the sidewall, attach planters complying with fall protection. Finally, they are proposing a door at the side of the stoop consisting of glazing set behind ironwork instead of a gate. The applicants have confirmed that they will be able to use the existing historic carving at the neighboring properties in the row and the historic condition photos as a basis to accurately match the historic detailing. And these are some photos of the existing carving as well as the non-historic planters at the neighbors, and the proposed planters will match these in design. And these images show additional views of that brownstone stucco detailing. This slide shows existing and proposed plans for the proposal at both parlor level and basement level. The planters acting as fall protection along the areaway wall can be seen in this location here, as well as here. And this shows the existing sections on the left, excuse me, and the proposed sections on the right. This shows an existing elevation in the center, a proposed elevation on the right, and on an elevation on the left with a red dotted line indicating the height of the stoop and parlor floor entrance size and placement prior to the interior floor height being raised. The elevation on the left shows the historic opening location, but not the historic designs of the entrance, stoop, and areaway wall. This shows the proposed doors at the main entrance, and photo number 22 here is of an entrance in this row. This shows the proposed door at the side of the stoop featuring ironwork and glazing and examples of existing doors and gates within this historic district and other districts around Central Park. And this slide shows some additional views of the existing areaway along with the proposal for the areaway walls. And this shows some construction details. That completes the presentation, and the applicant would like to make a few brief closing remarks and is available to answer any questions. So Hilda, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name for the record before proceeding with your remarks.
Thank you, Dina. So this is Hilda Cohen from Matisse Architecture and Design, and we would like to just reiterate that our intent and the client's intent is to match the historic detail and the consistent lines across this block as much as possible while accommodating that 23-inch change in height from a previous owner during a previous renovation. And the complicated nature of that, what could have been very straightforward, those horizontal lines, those curved, those decorative elements, we're bringing all of those back. And we're really quite proud of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any questions at this time. We'll move to public testimony. And if you're in the meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I will turn it over to Lisa to walk us through the testimony.
Okay, so we have 4 people with their hands raised. Let's start with George Calderaro. Okay, George, I've brought you in.
George Calderaro, Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society supports this proposal to recreate a missing stoop. It is a gift to the block, the historic district, and the city, and should be so acknowledged. As the proposed new stoop is based closely on the original of this building in its materials, form, proportions, and details, it is appropriate. Accommodating the change in first floor height creates only a subtle change in proportions, which does not detract from the overall composition and commemorates historic changes to the building. We note that this style, and specifically this row of houses, is characterized by effusive carved foliate ornament. It seems that the applicant intends to recreate this ornament, which we encourage. There are craftsmen who can recreate it in carved and molded stucco, and we hope the applicant will consider reproducing some of the ornament in key locations on the stoop and entrance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have Landmark West and Sean Corsandi.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee can get very argumentative, but in this instance was in full agreement. The committee believes this intervention will be an asset to the landmark and the row on this block. We thank the designers for guiding their client in these appropriate choices and the client for listening to their landmark. We look forward to seeing the completed work. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee strongly supports approval of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Kelly Carroll.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council.
Yeah.
HDC would like to ensure that the Queen Anne filigree present in the historic photograph will also be replicated in the areas of the proposed scope of work. We were unable to ascertain if these details are proposed for the new stoop and the doors surround, as they were not drawn or rendered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, Michelle Parker, I also see your hand raised.
Thank you. Michelle Parker, co-chair of CB7 Manhattan Preservation Committee, where this application is located. This application was approved unanimously by the full board. We are impressed with the applicant's eagerness to replicate the masonry stoop and masonry details from the 1940s historic tax photo and the neighborhood precedents. We understand, we were also impressed with the plan's harmonious appearance with that building, along with numbers 22 and 24, although this applicant will have to add 3 risers to the stoop. We understand they did the best with what they had. We appreciate that the lines of this renovation are all elegant. And we appreciate that the applicant took our recommendation to replace the double front door with 2 panels, 2 rectangles of glass with a pair of doors, each of which features a single tall, thin pane of glass. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
Great. And Rich, do we have any written testimony?
No other additional written testimony.
Thank you. All right. So I'd like to turn to the applicant. I think that we've heard very positive testimony, but if you want to speak to the questions that were raised in the testimony about the details, I think you did say it in your presentation, but just to clarify, that would be helpful.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you for the opportunity. The renderings show sort of an outlined square or rectangle, and those actually are representative of where more descriptive detail, more historic detail are going to be placed along the stoop, along the brackets, along the brownstone columns, and very much along the newels. So the precedent photos that were within the presentation, whether they're both on the property building or the adjacent building, are going to be used to match those details.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, so I am starting to unmute or request to unmute so that we can make a motion to close the hearing and begin our discussion. So Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is now closed and we'll begin our discussion. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you like to start this one?
Well, you had me at stoop. I love the return of the stoop. And when you restore a stoop, you know, you can make a few other minor mistakes, and I tend to be forgiving, and, you know, I'm never really that forgiving. And in this case, you know, it's such a close replication that even if it's imperfect, it's a very, very strong effort. So I'm completely supportive.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
I agree. This is a great improvement.
Great. Commissioner Holford Smith.
I agree. I think it's going to be a big improvement on this house.
And Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I agree. It's great to see the stoop restored, and I think it's a good project. I can approve it as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
Very controversial. I think you should be going into politics. You know, lower taxes, healthcare for all, stoops everywhere. Let's go.
Great. Commissioner Bland.
Yeah, this is really as much for the civic realm as it is for the private owner, and I think it's wonderful and certainly appropriate.
Great. Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree. It's going to be great on the block too.
Jefferson.
I use the word wonderful project.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Gustafson, we are all in agreement. Would you make the motion?
Well, you know, if we elect the right mayor next time, we'll get free stoops for everybody. In the matter of LPC 21-00271, 18 West 75th Street in the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. The application is to construct a stoop and entrance and modify the areaway. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. The commission also notes, I also note that the historic parlor floor entrance and stoop were removed and the floor level of the first floor was raised prior to the designation of the historic district. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed stoop and parlor floor entrance will closely replicate the historic stoop and entrance in terms of design and details, and the stucco cladding will closely match the historic brownstone in terms of finish, texture, profiles, and details. That the placement of the entrance doors at a higher level than the historic doors and corresponding height of the stoop align with the existing interior floor level. That the proposed paired wood and glass parlor floor doors are consistent with doors in buildings of this age and style in terms of proportions, materials, details, and finish. And that the proposed door at the side of the stoop, featuring a metal grille set in front of glazing, will recall the historic gate in design and details. That the height of the stoop cheek walls and areaway walls and integrated planters will comply with fall protection requirements. That variations in design of the entrance, infill, and stoop from the historic conditions will not disrupt the unity of the row. That the proposed areaway wall will feature proportions and details which will help it to relate well to the design of the house and stoop and will not detract from the unity of the row. And that the work will enhance the special architectural and historic character of the house, the row, and the streetscape.
And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you second that motion?
You hear me?
No.
Oh, sorry, second, yes.
Okay, thanks. And Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baran,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, none in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
It's approved. Good luck. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next item is number 12, LPC 21-01073, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1170, lot 7502. 2211 Broadway, the Apthorpe Apartments individual landmark, also in the West End Collegiate Historic District extension. This is an Italian Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Clinton and Russell, built in 1906 to 08. The application is to remove cast iron vault covers at an areaway and to reconstruct select stairs.
And commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Staff will be presenting components of the proposal with the applicants available for questions and comment following. Staff, you now have control of the presentation. If you could unmute yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is Dina Posner from the preservation staff, and I'll be presenting this application for 2211 Broadway. The applicant is also present to answer any questions. The Apthorpe Apartments is an individual landmark which occupies the full block between West 78th Street, West 79th Street, Broadway, and West End Avenue, and has areaway walls which wrap around all of its sides except for the Broadway side. The proposal previously included replacing a modern stair, but the replacement of the stair has been omitted from the proposal. This site plan here shows the proposed area of work at an areaway located on the northeast side, the northeast corner of the building towards the corner of Broadway and West 79th Street. The scope of this proposal is to remove cast iron vault covers and a modern concrete built-in bench at this areaway. The modern concrete bench has granite at its base, which may have been salvaged from the historic wall. These are proposed to be replaced with concrete paving on new decking at the areaway and a granite wall section in place of the bench. This slide shows historic and existing condition photos of the building from the same perspective. The areaway that we are looking at is located towards the bottom right-hand side of these photos. This existing areaway plan shows the extent of the vault covers, which are currently covered in concrete, outlined in red. And the photos below show the existing conditions at the areaway. The modern concrete built-in bench, which is seen here, will be removed and a new section of granite wall to match the surrounding wall will be constructed. This shows the proposed plan with the new concrete paving and the new section of granite wall seen here. This slide shows the existing section on the left and the proposed section on the right for the areaway. The photo on the left shows that the concrete covered vault covers can only be seen from public thoroughfares by looking directly over the wall or bench. The next several sheets show the existing condition of the vault covers. The applicants are available to answer any questions regarding the damage and hazards being caused by the existing conditions. These are more photos of the conditions of the vault covers as seen from beneath, and a couple of additional photos. This slide shows the existing and proposed elevations and sections for the bench replacement. The two historic photos on the top show what appears to have been the creation of an opening in this area of the facade and wall in the early 20th century. What was being built at the time is not known. The bench was constructed at some point after this photo was taken and was in place by the mid-20th century. The photos on the bottom show the existing conditions of the bench, which has cracks in the concrete as well as some rebar exposed, seen here. That completes the presentation, and the applicant is present to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, not seeing any questions at this time. I think we'll move to public testimony. And if you're in the meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your hand so we can identify you. And we will begin with anyone who signed up in advance, and we will get to everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Kersavage to take us through the testimony.
Okay, thank you. And there were 3 people signed up to speak. We'll start with George Calderaro.
George Calderaro. The Victorian Society in New York notes that there are some extenuating circumstances in this proposal to remove an extensive amount of cast iron and glass vault lights. They're presently covered with concrete, are not normally visible as a typical sidewalk level installation, though they are visible from the areaway wall and from the entrance stair, and they are perhaps not as characteristic of residential buildings as they are of older commercial districts where they're usually found. However, we oppose this proposal because of the terrible precedent it would create. The vault lights are important and scarce historic material that, if exposed, would add to the texture and interest of the landmark, and their removal would violate historic preservation standards and therefore be inappropriate. The applicant might consider the technical feasibility of placing the covers on top of a new structural or waterproofing system, thus eliminating the need for them to perform these functions. Thank you.
Lisa?
Lisa, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Kelly, I brought you in. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Thank you. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. While HDC is likely the minority report regarding these subterranean features, we are consistent in our message. Keep the vault lights. The Apthorpe is an individual landmark, and the details of its external perimeter are as important as its interior courtyard. Original ornate design intentions should be considered for retention at the very least, even if they have been forgotten about until this application. Vault lights are commercially available, and their replacement is an option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll bring in Sean Corsandi, Landmark West.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sean Corsandi for Landmark West. After multiple attempts, the Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee recognizes that the Commission strongly believes vault lights are a Soho landmark, not a design feature of the Upper West Side. Yet, for the 2 or 3 of these that come before us every year, our committee repeats that the more these vault lights are approved for removal, the further that stance about them not being a design feature on the Upper West Side rings true. While within the West End Collegiate Historic District extension, the Apthorpe is also an individual landmark and must be scrutinized at a higher level. The vault lights have been poorly maintained, so the reward is removal? While these may be beyond repair, replacement in kind rather than a dry moat would be more in keeping with the intent, but not necessarily as expected. Rather than providing light to those below the sidewalk, imagine the diffuse uplighting from this setback for pedestrians passing by in the evening. While perhaps an unintended benefit, lighting landmarks has become a niche trade. Why not allow the original architects to lead? As for the bench, we can support its removal if it can be removed and infilled in kind without further damage to the original fabric. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee supports approval of this application with modifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mark Diller.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Diller. I'm the chair of Community Board 7. This is obviously one of the iconic Upper West Side landmark buildings. I'm here to present to you our recommendation to disapprove the application. It was a split vote at committee, which was turned around at full board. The resolution to disapprove was eventually adopted by our full board by a measure of 30 to 12 to 5 to 0, so about a 2-to-1 margin. The deciding factors at full board included that we did not address or take into account one way or another the cost differential between any of the or among any of the alternatives that were proposed. We did take into account that the Apthorpe is an individual landmark as well as being located in the Upper West Side the West End Avenue Historic District. We also took into account that the vault lights were an original element of the design of the building, and that even though their function is no longer needed for to illuminate the boiler room below, the board was uncomfortable in substituting its design preferences for those of Clinton and Russell, who designed the building in the first place, and the impresario of this oratorio of a building, William Waldorf Astor himself. While the granite wall does enclose the areaway, and essentially these vault lights are visible, even though you kind of have to look for them in order to find them. It's nonetheless visible from the public way. And so for those reasons, on balance, the board voted to disapprove the application to remove the vault lights. We did, however, support the retaining of the bench. And not just because one of our board colleagues recalls fondly sitting on the bench with his grandmother while waiting for the M79 bus, but because it is both a useful element of the facade and is now a familiar and an appropriate one. And as long as it can be resurfaced to match the granite wall, it would be an improvement to the facade. So for those reasons, we recommend a split a disapproval of the removal of the vault lights and retaining the bench. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I don't see any of the hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And Rich, do we have any other written testimony?
We do. We have a letter from the West End Preservation Society in opposition to the project.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's turn to the applicant and see if they would like to address or respond to the comments that we've heard in public testimony. Is the applicant here?
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you all for joining today. We wanted to take a chance to let you know that even though they are a historic element of the building themselves, they're causing damage, substantial damage to the boiler room below because of their deterioration and the water infiltration that they're allowing. You can't really see this area from the street unless you're particularly peeking your head over the approximately 4-foot wall. It's becoming an area where homeless have been gathering, and that's causing damage to the waterproofing as well, I'm sure. And the bench itself is another area where the homeless have had a chance to take up residence often. So for those reasons, we wanted to remove the lighting, and as a hardship to the client, the current condition is a waterproof membrane in the area. It's the only area around the building that is covered. So we were just trying to replace in kind to keep a watertight condition. And for those reasons, that's why we're trying to push this through. Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, do you have any final questions at all? Okay. So why don't we move to close the hearing? I'm going to start to unmute or request to unmute, as the case may be. All right. And Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
All right. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And, I think it's a fascinating thing. These vault light covers are, objects of, love. We love them. We think there's, real quality and textural and detailed quality about them. I think in some of the industrial districts like Soho, where they're really on the street and they're an integral part of the sidewalk, they really do kind of define that streetscape. In other places, they were used, as they were in Soho, as utilitarian features used for daylighting while doubling as a walking surface. So, I don't know that one could say this was a design intent, but certainly is fabric that represents functional and sort of technical tools at the time the building was built. So I think this will be an interesting discussion. We've heard a lot of testimony in support of retaining them. So why don't we go ahead? Commissioner Shamir Baran, did you have a question, or do you want to go ahead?
Just a quick question, in case I missed it. Originally, were the vault lights around the entire building?
Corey, can you or Dina answer that?
I do not believe that they are around the entire building. I know Bernadette went on a site visit, but I do not believe that they were around the entire building now.
No, I guess I'm not asking if they currently are or remnants are, but if there's any information that leads us to think that they were planned originally around the entire building.
I'm not sure about if they were planned. Currently, they are not elsewhere around the building.
Right, and so we'd have to understand, this, I guess the boiler room was under here, but were there other vaulted spaces underneath the moat? We'd have to learn more to determine that. Okay, all right. So why don't we start the discussion? Commissioner Bland, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, you probably picked the wrong one, but I will start. I don't think I rhapsodize quite so eloquently or fervently as others might with vault lights. I certainly accept them as part of the Soho street scene and have voted many, many times to have them replaced. My view is that they are utilitarian wherever they were, actually. It's just that in Soho, they form a whole context of the environment. Here they don't. I'm not sure that they would have been used as frequently as they were when they were because of their ultimate ability to fail pretty miserably and quickly. So in this case, probably knowing my fellow commissioners who will speak after I do, I may be in the minority, but I can accept the application as as it is.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, we know that these are very deteriorated. We really don't know if they were planned to occupy a more expansive space around the building. I have to say, in this particular instance, I would agree with Fred, and I can accept this project as it is.
Commissioner Jefferson?
I cannot accept this project. I think the glass lights are important, and I also think the bench is an urban amenity, so I cannot support this.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson?
Well, for me, the bench is the easy one. That could certainly go. Not being original in any event, and in bad condition. The vault lights I struggle with, but in this case, I'm with Commissioner Bland. The application's fine.
Commissioner Shamir Baran?
Yeah, I think it's very important to know if there were vault lights all the way around this single block building, because then it would really be distinctive and very much unlike the Soho condition, but important for this one. So that I feel is important. But I also think that that the idea of a moat with a vault on it makes so much sense, and this particular district has these buildings with moats, and I think we might want to rethink that situation. That yes, it's true, vault lights are more characteristic to Soho, but in the case when there are buildings with these kind of dramatic, encircled moats around them, it would make these vault lights a lot of sense. And we're particular to them. So I actually think, voting against, saying that I don't approve of their removal would mean that we would want to keep some last remaining fragment of what once was. And that's not as important to me. If we were to find out that there was more of it, it would be interesting. I mean, I think at this point, I would like to say that I think they should be retained.
Commissioner Holford Smith?
I think that they are an important element to the building, even though they're not as easily seen, as the vault lights are in Soho and Tribeca. They were, this was part of the original design, and I think that they should be retained.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I'm with Fred on this one. I think his analysis is correct. I think that they were originally utilitarian, but have become a part of the streetscape and the texture of the city that reflects a historic period. I think the fact that they are in moat here, they were streetscape and are intended to be part of the visual composition of the building. That they are less significant elements in there and can be modified. Though we do know what we're going to get Chair Carroll for Christmas, given her use of praise of them.
Okay. All right. So I think we are split on this, and I think definitely half of the commission feels that these are significant features. And so I think what we'll do is take no action today. If the applicant chooses to follow the recommendations to restore and or replicate the vault light covers, that ultimately could be approved at staff level. Otherwise, they can come back with perhaps more information about the entire site and Oh, Diana, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, one, that I do support the removal of the bench. I think that that's not a historic feature, and I think it would be an improvement and back toward the historic condition. And in this case, though, I reacted first by looking at, okay, the location visible of the vault lights, and they're not usually associated with the district or this type of building, but it's an individual landmark. It was part of the design. And I think it was probably a very limited part for just very utilitarian purposes. But it is, in a way, because it's an unusual condition, I think that because it's historic, we should actually preserve it. And also that the condition of them don't actually look as bad as many times when we've seen vault lights. They're in a lot worse condition. These are not in a location where they're going to be, as they are in an industrial area, driven on by trucks, which tends to be part of the problem. So I think what I'd like to do is just say that I support the bench removal, but I would not support the removal of the vault lights. And that in that case, I think if they could replace them, as someone suggested, on top of a coating that was more, not water permeable, perhaps that could be done. So they would achieve making it a watertight, but at the same time having the vault lights be able to be displayed. So thank you for letting me go.
Great, thank you. And thank you for raising your hand, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, we don't have an approval for the removal of the vault lights, and there is a solution at staff level to retain, repair, or replicate, in allowing some variation in the installation method. And so I think that what we can do is take no action on the vault lights. We can approve the removal of the bench today, and they can hopefully resolve the vault lights at staff level, but can come back to us if they have more information about the use of it at the building or any other information that would be new information. So I'll go ahead and make this a motion to approve in part. So in the matter of docket number 21-01073, 2211 Broadway, the Apthorpe Apartments, individual landmark within the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension, an Italian Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Clinton and Russell and built in 1906-08. This is an application to remove cast iron vault covers at an areaway and reconstruct stairs. And I recommend approval in part, finding that the proposed concrete bench is a simply designed later alteration, and its removal in conjunction with the restoration of the wall will not eliminate a significant architectural feature, and that that portion of the work will not detract from the significant architectural features of this individual landmark or the West End Collegiate Historic District. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
For the bench only, right?
Yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
And Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
So that is approved in part for the removal of the bench and the restoration of the wall only. And we'll ask the applicant to continue to talk to and consult with the staff on the cast iron and glass vault light covers. And we'll move to the next item.
And the next item is number 13, LPC 20-09550, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1407, Lot 59, 1022 Lexington Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District Extension. A neo-Greek style row house designed by Tom and Wilson and built in 1880 to 81. The application is to replace storefront infill and entrance infill and modify openings.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. You now have control of the slides. Please unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you may begin. So it said you'll just need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Theodore Bodner. I am the applicant of record for this application and proposal at 1022 Lexington Avenue. That is located at the southwest corner of Lexington Avenue and 73rd Street. The project is for a building that was built in the 1880s. It has gone through significant renovations since its original construction. You can see the first 2 floors, which are indeed the scope of work for this project, that have been renovated considerably since its original construction. We are proposing to minimally increase the amount of glass at the first and second levels. We had previously gone to the Landmarks Committee of Community Board number 8, and they had come back to us with comments that we had made the glass too large and too massive. So we reduced our massiveness of our glass at the first 2 floors to be more in proportion to the building, and also broke up the glass panes at the second floor level to further reduce the appearance of the sizing of the glass. And we are also removing the wood siding at the first floor that was put in at some point, probably during the 70s or 80s, and returning it to its original brick material of construction. We also decided that we'd like to keep the vertical thickness of the brick verticals on the Lexington Avenue and the East 73rd Street sides to provide a more consistent rhythm to the facade with the glass. We have relocated the residential entry from Lexington Avenue to the East 73rd Street side, which is where the residential portion of the block is actually located and the residential zoning of the block is located. There is a historic looking wrought iron door insert at the first floor level. This is at the interior of the door, and we will be reinstalling this on the East 73rd Street side on the interior residential portion also. We are also raising the level of the floors at the first floor level to account and allow for handicapped entry at the ground floor, both for the commercial and the residential portions of the building. We raised the bulkheads of the first floor storefronts to meet the landmark criteria and standards for SAMES. And if you take a look at the section of the glass fenestration, we did set back the building fenestration from the building masonry at the first and second floor levels to accentuate and provide a little bit more ornamentation, similar to before at the first floor level, but it's a little bit deeper at that point to provide more depth to the glass. After our redesign and glass reduction, we did go back to Community Board number 8's Landmarks Committee, and their general board voted to approve our proposal unanimously. And that is the scope of our project here.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions at this time? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead. Just remember to unmute yourself.
On your Lexington facade, you see all those vertical mullions. Do they align with the second floor vertical mullions, or
they do?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
They
That's
do.
right. That's right. And previously they did not, so we wanted to actually keep that uniformity going across the board, top to bottom.
So on this facade, on the side facade, you decided not to do it there? Is that
on East 73rd? We have it going
Yes.
through for most of the commercial portion, including the commercial entry point. The only offset is at the residential entry point right here, because the upstairs window misaligns with the column that's between the two doorways. But otherwise, for the rest of our proposal, we did use those lines for alignment. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Okay, why don't we move to testimony, and then we may have questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I will now turn it over to Lisa to walk us through the testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have 2 people signed up, and I've already brought in Friends of the Upper East Side.
Hi, this is Laura Variali representing Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Chair Carroll and Honorable Commissioners. Friends Preservation Committee applauds the applicant for working with the community and altering its proposal before coming to the Commission. We believe we all benefit from the community's review process, and proposals that do take into consideration the public's opinion are often more respectful and in keeping with the neighborhood historic character. Friends appreciates the thorough restoration of this corner row house. The reintroduction of traditional brickwork on the street level will highly improve the building's aesthetics. The use of the decorative moldings, wooden transoms, and multi-light windows on the 2nd floor are in keeping with the building's character and are appropriate to the Upper East Side Historic District. We do lament the loss of the quirky signage on the 2nd floor. Although not original to this building, it adds character to the streetscape. While we do not oppose the relocation of the building's entrance to the street side, Friends Preservation Committee thinks the proposed doors are too glassy for this building's style and would prefer a more traditional ensemble within firmament. Finally, we applaud the proposal to reinstall the decorative wrought iron door, but would prefer it to be in a more prominent location and not behind glass doors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Kelly Carroll also signed up.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. HDC found this application to lack sufficient documentation of masonry openings, particularly how the lintels, sills, and brick molds will be detailed to offer an informed determination of appropriateness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised.
And Rich, did we receive any written testimony?
We do have the resolution, as the applicant noted, from Community Board 8 recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to turn back to the applicant and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard, particularly about the details or all of the components of the project.
I think with respect to the door, we could certainly probably relocate the wrought iron doors a little bit closer to the front of the building. If it could support the load, it is a very heavy wrought iron door, and we would want to make sure that the door would not be impeded in terms of its opening, but we could definitely incorporate that.
Okay, all right. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, so I think we will move to our discussion on this one. And I am starting to request to unmute you, and in some cases just unmuting you, depending on what the settings allow. All right, and Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Gustafson, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, thanks. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And, this row house, like so many that define and characterize Madison Avenue, is a row house that was converted to commercial retail use early in the 20th century, with the stoop being removed and this sort of two-story zone of storefront infill being added. And we've seen in many cases like that, often the residential door is later found on the side door of corner buildings that have these commercial conversions at the ground floors. So this is a proposal to modify fabric that has been in place a while, but a lot of it not historic fabric. And so, and that includes replacing infill, and then adding new layers onto the building and framements onto the building. So why don't we start this discussion? Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I have to say, I think overall the project looks good. I'm having a little bit of a problem with the bands between the two windows. I feel like there needs to be some air between them. Maybe that should be brickwork. I also see the issue with the this alignment issue with the door on the side relative to the windows above, but I'm not 100% sure what we should do about it, and I'm very interested to hear what some of the other commissioners think.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Jefferson?
I think it's let me sum my up. I think it's better than what was there before. And the only issue I have is the entry to the apartment buildings. And I think the glass door should be a solid door, and it would work better at that end. And the glass door would be for commercial. But on the whole, it's okay. It works fine.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Jefferson. I have a little bit of difficulty with sort of resolving what's going on with the entrances on the side street, and how they relate to what's above them. And I understand that the brick pier is in an odd place, and I'm curious as to whether that's where it originally was. But I think that whole ensemble, starting with the window to the left of those two doors and going through those two doors, needs to be resolved.
Okay. Commissioner Shamir Barron?
Yes, I think I'm in agreement with Commissioner Jeffries. I think this is all right, but I agree with him about the glass doors. I don't know. I actually think this is appropriate, and I could approve it as presented.
Okay. Commissioner Halford-Smith?
In general, I think this is an improvement to this building. But I definitely agree about the entry door, and perhaps with the incorporation of that iron door, maybe the elimination of the glass side light, it would read more as a residential entry. I don't know what you do about the alignment. It doesn't seem to be, that pier doesn't seem to have been there previously, so I'm not sure if there's any about it, but I think the residential entry should be differentiated from the commercial entry. And there's something a little bit odd also, large bay on Lexington, just sort of floating on the brick. And I wondered if it should have a wood bulkhead to make it look more like a storefront. Other than that, I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin? Commissioner Chapin, okay, she may have stepped away. So Commissioner Goldblum?
I think it's actually fine as is. While I think that a lot of the suggestions that have been raised are good ideas, and the applicant should consider refining the project as has been suggested, I think it's acceptable as is.
Okay. Okay, so I think, oh, Commissioner Bland,
Sarah.
I'm sorry. Oh, all right, and Commissioner,
Yeah,
we'll
I
go
can
to
accept it
Commissioner,
as is, as is.
okay, as is, and Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you. I agree with some of the other commissioners that I think wooden doors would be preferable on the residential side. And if there's something to be done to improve the alignment with those residential doors, then that should be done if that's possible. But otherwise, I can pretty much approve it as presented.
Okay. All right, so now I think I have everyone, and I think that we have some that would approve it as is, and others who would approve it with there being that the sort of ensemble of the doors be better resolved, including differentiating the residential door from the storefront door, and exploring the alignment to see whether that's feasible as well. So maybe let me go ahead and I'll make that motion as well so we can move this one along. Okay. So in the matter of docket number LPC 20-09550, 1022 Lexington Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District, a neo-Grec style row house designed by Tom and Wilson and built in 1880 to 1881. This is an application to replace storefront and entrance infill and modify openings. And I recommend approval with modifications that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the placement, size, and proportions of the modified masonry openings will maintain a pattern of punched openings and solid to void ratio, which are typical of row houses with altered bases throughout the historic district. That the proposed brickwork will match the existing brickwork in terms of materials, finishes, texture, and coursing, thereby helping to restore a unified relationship between the base and the upper floors. The proposed infill will be simply designed and feature materials, finishes, and a level of transparency, which are typical of storefronts throughout the historic district. And that the composition and details of the infill, including a display window with butt jointed glazing, will be consistent with the variety of storefront infill found at altered row houses along Lexington Avenue within this historic district. However, I find that the area of the entrances to be unresolved, and recommend that the applicant work in consultation with the staff to make modifications to the design to distinguish the residential door from the retail door, including adding more solidity to the residential door, and that the applicants explore the possibility of aligning openings, the feasibility of aligning openings. Okay, I think that's it. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, and Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Aye.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, with 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we'll move to the next item. It's item number 14, LPC 20-08498, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, block 1460, lot 60, 35-29 86th Street in the Jackson Heights Historic District. An Anglo-American garden home style house designed by Charles Stidoff and built in 1926 to 27. The application is to install a garden wall and fencing.
Right.
Commissioners, the applicants have joined the hearing. Note that staff will be walking you through the proposal, and the applicants are available for questions at the end. And staff, just remember to unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Anastasios Giannopoulos, and the owner is next to me.
Yes, Rosalie Irachu.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioner Sarah Camelatos, Preservation staff.
Hello.
The item before you is 3529 86th Street, a freestanding house located mid-block on the east side of 86th Street between 35th and 37th Avenues in the Jackson Heights Historic District. The application is to install a garden wall, fences, and driveway gates. This is an existing condition streetscape photo. The subject property is on the left-hand side of the slide, highlighted by the black arrow. And here is an existing condition photo of the property. The following existing condition photographs document why the garden wall, fences, and driveway gates are being proposed. The applicant will be able to walk you through these images in more detail. The proposal includes a brick garden wall topped by a black painted metal fence surrounding the front yard and returning up the front walkway as shown on the right-hand side of this slide. It will be a total of 4 feet tall. A gate will also extend across the front of the driveway adjacent to the sidewalk and terminate with a brick wall along the areaway of the adjacent property. Both the gate and the wall will be 4 feet tall. A 6 foot tall black painted metal fence is proposed at the side and rear yards, and a 6 foot tall black painted metal gate is proposed to be set back across the driveway. And this is a rendering of the proposed garden wall, fences, and gates. And these are the details of the proposed garden wall, fences, and gates. The applicant has also prepared streetscape photos documenting both sides of their block, which features large and small apartment buildings as well as single-family detached houses. The applicant has also provided examples of similar installations in the streetscape. Please note that the fence and gate here at 3545 86th Street were not present in photos taken at the time of designation, and LPC has no record of permits for these fences. The applicant and owner are here to present the appropriateness of the proposal and answer any additional questions.
Okay, so in keeping with the context of the neighborhood, we duplicated what was performed at 35-46 86th Street, which is slides number 15 and 16. Yeah, these are the 2 slides. And then this is the side yard. And to secure the house from vandalism and graffiti, just slides number 5 and 7. We placed a 4-foot fence and gate in the front yard, and then a 6-foot fence gate at the building front line rear yard. In photos or slides number 4 and 10. And Ms. Irachi had something to say too.
Yes, yes. I'm with these graffitis and trespassing. I am fearful. I am fearful to be in my own home, and I feel I need to be secure. I need safety, and I think these will help me tremendously if I could get the fences.
Okay. All right. I think we have at least one question here. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, it was, I guess, from an earlier period, but I do have a question actually, which is about it looks like there are two fences on the driveway. Why is there a need for both those fences on the driveway? If you could explain that. In other words, not just one fence on the driveway.
Right. We had an incident where she has illegally parked cars now in her, because if you left that open in the front, you would actually have that car park, like at slide number 5, you'll see. Can you turn to slide number 5? Yeah. Either or. I mean, that's why. I mean, you have that black car sitting in the front driveway. I mean, if you leave that open, they're just gonna park there.
Well, why, if you close the front drive, if you have the front gate and you keep that closed when you're not in there yourself,
Right.
how would people get in there then? Why would you need the 6-foot one in back of it? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Instead of she was actually she was more protective of the entry in the side yard, because she has another entry to the building on the side yard.
Uh-huh.
So she would want some type of protection, like a secondary protection, you know, for you know, her security. You know, anybody entering, you know, the backyard. The 4-foot fence could be climbed over. It's a little bit easier to, I guess, get over it. But the 6-foot high fence is a little bit more restrictive, and that's why she wanted it on the side of the house, so it can secure the side entry on the side of the house.
Do you have any security lighting or anything, or?
We don't have any. We initially proposed some type of cameras to install cameras, but then that was something that I guess we removed once we spoke to LPC. I mean, if there's something that we can install too, that would be helpful too. I mean, not only the gates, but the camera system would be definitely helpful. It would definitely help to deter the vandals.
Well, I was also thinking of a light that comes on, you know, when somebody enters an area, you know.
Yeah, we could do motion sensors with lighting. Yeah, we could add that in there. That'd be nice.
Okay. I'm not sure why those couldn't have been, you know, installed as long as they were done discreetly. But anyway, okay. Thank you for your comments on the fence, on that gate, I should call it.
Thank you. Yeah, we could definitely.
He has them on his side.
Sarah, you're muted.
Muted. Sorry about that. Commissioner Lutfi, did you have a question or no?
Yeah. I have 2 questions. Also back to the driveway area. So on the right side of the driveway where the front fence is there a wall there, or is there fence that runs along that side? What's connecting, or what's what is there?
So the side of the house, the right side or the left side?
On the left side.
The left side, it would be just from the neighboring wall all the way to our wall, which is aligned with the same wall.
So it's the same wall that's on the left side.
Yeah, the left side is the neighboring wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then our wall aligns with that wall.
I see.
On the opposite side. I know there's a tree there or whatever, a bush, so you can't tell, but yeah, that would align.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yep.
Other questions? All right, why don't we move to public testimony, and we can come back and we may have more questions after that. So if you're in the meeting and would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you, and Lisa Krasavage will walk us through the testimony.
Okay, we've had one person sign up to speak, and that's Kelly Carroll.
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council, and I did understand from the presentation what you're proposing, but I have to read what I wrote. So with that, HDC would like to ensure that the proposed perimeter fence labeled in the plan as new 4-foot high masonry wall is in fact the 1-foot 8-inch masonry fence with ironwork atop it and not an opaque brick wall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else to testify.
All right, and Rich, do we have any written testimony?
We do have a resolution from Community Board 3 recommending approval of the project with the provision that the fence be installed in the front along 86th Street sidewalk to remain at 4 or lower in height, 4 feet or lower in height.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think, do we want to just turn, let me turn back to the applicant and see if you want to try to address the question in the testimony about the wall and the fence, just to be clear. What's there now and what's being proposed? And maybe that photograph, yeah, this would be a good photograph.
Yeah, we could go to the before picture, which is number 4, slide number 4. Yeah, which is this one. It shows, you know, there's no fence in the front yard, and then on the line, the fence along the line of the building in the front yard, and then in the rear yard too, there's no fence. And if you go to slide number 10, I'll show you the after photo.
Okay, so it looks like actually the brick walls on both sides of the driveway are being proposed, correct? So you're proposing.
We're gonna raise them 20 inches. Basically, the height that we saw on the neighboring building on 35-46.
Okay.
So we will raise it to the same height, and then just from there on, add a steel fence.
Okay.
Up to 4 feet.
So
Yeah.
two brick walls flanking the driveway, a 4-foot-high fence.
No, the brick wall, actually the wall that's on the other side of the left side, there's an existing wall there already. It's actually made out of, it's not masonry, it's actually made out of some type of wood cladding. It's there now. You'll see it. Yeah, that's it right there.
So are you proposing to add brick to that, or?
No, we're not gonna add anything to it. We're just gonna extend, yeah.
So the photo montage, is that accurate or not, showing the brick wall there?
Yeah, that's not accurate with the brick wall. It's just gonna be a wood wall.
Okay.
What's there now, yeah.
All right, so you're going to work with the neighboring property to extend a wood wall on the left side of the driveway, do a brick wall on the right side of the driveway, 4-foot-high fence at the sidewalk, a 6-foot-high fence at the building line, and then at the front yard, reconfigure the yard to create a retaining wall, brick retaining wall, and a fence on top of it.
Right.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead.
I just had one point, a small one. I read somewhere where the gate was black. I just want to make sure that the gate on the right-hand side will be black too. So the fences is going to be black, correct? So that the image and the intent is the same.
Yes, we would keep everything black, as far as the fence.
Okay. And the gate to the right, it's gray now.
Yeah, the gate. It looks like it's gray, but it's black.
Okay, but make sure it's black.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any final questions? Any other questions? I mean. All right. Okay, not seeing any final questions. I'm going to start unmuting everyone so that we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. And Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing.
And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so, commissioners, as you know, the commission has had a now decades-long policy in this particular historic district, which was recently codified into our rules. And that rule now reflects the significance of this particular district as a garden district, and the idea that in front of the houses, these green zones were a kind of a zone within the public space, abutting the public sidewalk, and an important part of your reading of this as a garden district. And so, as a result, the policy, which is now codified as a rule to allow staff level approvals, is at houses, at the semi-detached and detached houses and attached houses to allow the front yards to be regraded with a low brick retaining wall, similar to what is being proposed here. But we have not, in most cases, approved fences on top of those brick walls, except in some one-off instances. And so as the application was presented today, I think that the applicant tried to show that in this case, this is not one of a group of semi-detached or detached houses. It is a little bit of a one-off in this streetscape. So that's one thing to consider. And then the other part of this application is includes the 2 fences at the driveway and the impact that that has on the streetscape and the district. And I think Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, this is, as we all know, it's a district in which the fence height is always an issue, and often on a long street, you'll see all sorts of brick walls and fences along a row of houses. Then, we're trying to get some kind of, uniformity or at least contiguous sense. In this case, it is a building somewhat by itself, a small house. And I don't think that the 4-foot fence, when I say 4 foot, it's 4 foot including the brick thing, is unreasonably high. It isn't really interfering with our view of the facade and of its detail. So I think, and the low fence that's there is also, I think, quite reasonable, the gated fence. It is an issue in this district. People do drive up on anybody's pavement if it's available, park in driveways that don't belong to them. Parking is at a premium because there aren't that many, there are very, very, very few garages, and you can, in some cases, park in driveways, or there are sometimes areas behind the houses where you can park. But it is an issue. And I do understand the security issues that the owner has here. So, I'd prefer not to see the 2 gates, but I'm not sure. I don't see an easy way to resolve that problem because about the only way to resolve it would be to have a 6-foot gate in the front, I think, and then high walls on the sides, which you'd have to get the neighbor to agree with, and which might be much more of a barrier. That's the only way I think you could deal with this and not have 2 gates. And I think perhaps this more transparent approach is actually a better approach in the circumstances. So I'm at this point, feeling like ready to support this, although it's a little unusual, but it's not a row of houses where you're dealing with, a row, but rather an individual situation. And you can see through these gates beyond to see the houses even that are beyond on the other side, the adjacent block. So I think I could support this.
Right. Great, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree with Diana. I think it's appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Bland?
Yeah, this is a one-off, not typical. It's okay as presented.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi?
Okay, I have another thought. I truly appreciate the challenges here, but on page 15, where you showed what another neighbor had done. Now I realize that there's a wood fence already on the on the left side of your driveway, if you're facing it. But in a way, I feel as though if you could run the low brick wall, working with your neighbor, this might be asking too much, and the fence, that just having the fence itself is a little bit of a deterrent. And then maybe you only really need 1 gate. So that's something to think about. If nobody agrees with that, I could think about approving this.
So, but I'm not sure I understand. So you're talking about bringing the low brick wall across?
I'm saying where that wooden fence was that we thought was a brick wall, but it was a 4-foot brick wall.
Mhm.
I guess what I'm saying is run the low brick there with a fence that goes up to 4 feet all the way down. And just the fact that there's a fence there is a little bit of a deterrent. That's what the neighbor had done. But instead of putting the driveway fence back, I can appreciate the fact that people are trying to park in your driveway, keeping it up front and only having one gate.
Okay, so but on the two, say you had 2 low brick walls, you return the retaining wall around the front yard and do a matching one on the other side with a fence on top. But you're still suggesting the gate to prevent parking between those 2 low walls, right?
Only one gate in the front.
And I think Jane's talking about removing the 6-foot
I'm
gate.
talking about removing the 6-foot gate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thinking about getting a security camera. I mean, I think this could work and aesthetically could look better.
Okay, but I think that the other examples had the fence at the building line, the gate at the building line.
No, I understand that. They did. They did, but I don't know if they're having, look, I think that would be the ideal way to do it, personally. That's the way to do it, but just in trying to work with the safety concern of the applicant, if we kept just the fence in the front and eliminated.
This is the last one.
Okay, sort of, so really continuing what you've done around the front yard over to the driveway and leaving it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it, understood. All right, Commissioner Jefferson?
I could support this as is.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson?
Not to make this even more complicated, but I've actually seen this solution for this exact problem, and it's this: a black fence post on either side of the sidewalk, and a heavy duty decorative black chain across it. That way, you don't have a double fence, and it blocks the driveway.
Okay, at the sidewalk, so
Right.
keeping the 6-foot fence and then it posts and chain at the driveway.
Yeah, the city actually does that on public schools all the time.
I could do that.
Okay. All right, and then Commissioner Shamir Barron?
Yeah, I can approve it as it's presented, but I agree with both John and Jeannie's thoughts that if possible to have only the gate that's back behind at the wall of the building, and to have either no gate at the sidewalk or a chain as John's proposing.
Okay. And Commissioner Holford Smith?
Actually, I can approve it as presented, but if the chain solution works, that would be preferable to having two sets of gates.
Okay. All right. So I think we have a lot of support here, understanding the security needs of the property owner, and recognizing that this block is different than many of the other blocks in the historic district, and this is not one of a continuous row of houses. And so I think, most people have expressed support for it as is, but with a preference for post and chain at the front. So why don't we make a motion to approve it and ask them to explore replacing the gate at the front with a post and chain? And Commissioner Chapin, would you make that motion?
Yes, I think that's a good, hopeful solution. It may be that one of the issues is whether they can put something where they can put something on the other side, since that's on the neighbor's property, obviously. So they have to work out something with the neighbor, whatever they're going to do to protect that area. And that wooden fence is not too suitable. So they might have to put it slightly over. Okay, in the matter of a certificate of appropriateness.
And Diana, I think that's why we'll say explore the feasibility of that.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just saying, whatever they do, they're going to have to work out something with the neighbor here. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Queens, LPC 20-08498 35-29, 86th Street, Jackson Heights Historic District, an Anglo-American garden home style house designed by Charles Stidolf and built in 1926-1927. Application is to install a garden wall and fencing. Hold on a minute. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the work will not damage any significant historic or architectural fabric, that the streetscape features a variety of building types, and this house is located between two larger apartment houses, separate from other single-family detached homes on this block, and therefore the presence of a fence will not alter the relationship of house to a row. That the immediately adjacent properties have fences and brick knee walls that have been added over time. Therefore, the presence of a fence and knee wall will relate to current conditions of the streetscape, and then the work will be in keeping with other fencing and knee walls found throughout this historic district. However, the commission would like to see the amount of fencing reduced if possible, and therefore that we would like the applicant to explore the use of a chain or cable closing to the instead of a fence at the sidewalk, and to explore that as a possibility with the staff. Does that work? Sarah, does that work?
Thank you. Yes, that's great. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you second that motion?
Second that motion.
Okay. Rich, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Yeah.
and Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
and Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 9 in favor and none opposed. The motion carries.
Approved, and we'll ask you to continue to explore that gate in the front with the staff. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, now, commissioners, we're going to conclude with item number 15 on the agenda, the 827, 831 Broadway buildings individual landmark. This is being read into the record and will be presented next week at the December 15th public hearing. If any members of the public cannot make the December 15th date and would like to testify now, they may do so by raising their hands and Lisa will call on them. Please note that if you testify today, you will not be able to testify next week.
Okay. I think, are we looking at the attendees?
I believe there is at least one raised hand.
Yeah. Lisa? I think we have one.
Sorry about that.
hand.
I thought we were reading more into the record. I do see one hand raised. So Esteban Rojas. So if you could please unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose, and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes if you choose to testify on this item today. Okay.
We got a bomber.
Okay, Mark, are you handling this? Okay, we got it.
Going on here.
Okay, so one last call. If anyone cannot make the hearing next week and would like to testify today, please raise your hand. All right, and so I think we don't have anyone who wishes to speak today, so we will put this on the schedule for next week and have a full presentation and testimony next week.
So we have another one, another hand raised. Mark, please be prepared. So this is Juan Martinez. And if you're here to speak on this item, please state your name for the record.
Okay. I don't hear anything, so.
Remember, I can't see what's going on because I'm.
Hi.
Hi, here to speak on 827 to 831 Broadway. Hi, would you like to speak on this item?
They're muted at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay, I think this person has left. Mark, did you do that?
No, I did not.
They changed their name.
Okay. To what?
Franco Polvora.
Wait, so is Juan Martinez, should I change them to attendee?
No, Mark, don't do anything, please.
Okay.
Okay. I've put that person in as an attendee. We can only have people that don't change their names once they're a panelist. Okay, I think that's the end of the testimony.
Okay, and again, we'll have a full discussion, presentation, discussion, and testimony next week on this item. I want to thank everyone for participating today. I'd like to thank the commissioners for your hard work and dedication as always, and to our staff for having a very efficient day, which had very many items. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week at next week's public hearing.